Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again, we're doing a dual stream once again with Bequalon Network. We know Big Brother Bequalon has he's the Pan African social media extraordinaire. And we're going to be deconstructing Candace Owens' Breakfast Club interview. As we know, Candace Owens is considered the face of the new Black Republican. So if you're watching in the Twitter space, formerly known as X, formerly known as Twitter, on Lumumba Speaks, and of course on Bequalon Network, make sure that you hit the subscribe, like button, as well as the notification bell. We want to make sure that we smash that algorithm. So once again, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always, keyword, always betting on Black. We're going to be deconstructing Candace Owens' Breakfast Club interview. So America's First White Man says hashtag Trump 2024. So you're going to need to stick around. And then, of course, tap in when I open things up. The link is in the chat. Then hopefully you can tap in when I finish. And we're going to be deconstructing, of course, her interview with the Breakfast Club. But before we do so, just want to make sure we go over some ground rules here. So when we open things up and we have the conversation, I think it's going to be a great conversation this evening. Want to make sure that diversity of thought is welcome. So diversity of thought is welcome. It doesn't matter if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle. Diversity of thought is welcome. Number two, no racial epithets of any kind. No epithets of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. So we believe in what the three ends of Black power, which are self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. Number three, facts over feelings. If you disagree with someone, no ad hominems, right? So you want to attack the argument the person's making, and of course, not the person. And then, of course, last but not least, no fundamentally false statements. So you can disagree with someone, have no problem with that. But you can't, and you can provide your own opinion, your own perspective, but you can't make a statement that is fundamentally false. So we're going to have to tax you and then, of course, put you on timeout. Not on timeout, but let you know that, hey, that is not the case whatsoever. And just very quickly, our mission here is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So with that being said, family, also want to go over today's Black History fact. And today's Black History fact took place 112 years ago, in which one of Black America's greatest administrators, educators, women's and civil rights activists, Dorothy Irene Height, was born on March 24th, 1912 in Richmond, Virginia. Height spent a lifetime working to improve the conditions of women. She served for 40 years as the president of the National Council of Negro Women. Height worked from 1944 to 1977 on the national staff of the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA. She also served from 1946 to 1957 as the president of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Right? Height was the first African American to own property on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. She received her undergraduate degree in 1932 and a master's a year later at New York University. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1994. Height's life was as her service to our community long and inspiring. She transitioned to the realm of the ancestors on April 20th, 2010 in Washington, D.C. at the age of 98. So definitely want to make sure that we honor one of our esteemed ancestors, one of the sisters in the struggle, that of course is Dorothy Irene Height. So family, I know this is what you all been waiting for. We're going to tap right in. Let me share my screen here and we're going to get right to it. We're going to be deconstructing, of course, Candace Owens' Breakfast Club interview. So here we go.
Ass up in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, just hilarious. Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Oh, they're not gonna like this one.
We have Candace Owens.
Candace Owens.
Welcome.
Hello.
How you feeling?
I feel great. A little tired. Had a wedding this weekend, but always feel great.
Back to New York. You're originally from here, right?
Yeah, I was born in New York, raised in Stanford, and then lived in New York after university for like 7 years. So I worked just 2 blocks away from here.
What part of New York?
Did I live in or?
Was born.
I was
raised.
born in White Plains.
Oh, White Plains. Okay. By the Bronx. Okay.
What is the Candace Owens origin story? I mean, I know a little bit of it because you know me and you actually used to have a lot of conversations back in the day before she changed her number. But
he was mad about that.
I mean, I did change mine, but you know,
girl, he was mad about that. He was like, I've been hitting up, and she ain't going
it kept going blue. I was like,
so we're gonna skip through
nothing,
this a little bit.
particularly that stood out in my childhood that made me think that I was going to go into politics. I feel like I landed into politics kind of accidentally. And I say accidentally because I thought I was a liberal my whole life. You know, I thought I was on the left my whole life and really didn't pay attention to politics in any meaningful way. And then, you know, when Trump was running for office, I didn't want him to be elected. I was like, this, not because I thought he was a racist or a sexist, but just because I thought it was crazy to go from Obama, who had a certain decorum about him, to suddenly this sort of brash New Yorker. But I thought it was weird when all of a sudden the people that liked Trump, you know, everyone thought he was like this iconic symbol of business. He was in rap songs. Trump was the status, flipped on him in 1 second. I didn't buy the narrative that he was in the media for 3-4 decades. And suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a racist. So I just didn't trust the media's narrative about.
All right. So that's one thing we're gonna need to discuss. D1 Beat says, peace, brother D1. Appreciate you, brother. I know you're working on that Pan-African rap album. Make sure you drop it so I can cop that. Appreciate you. So number one, she talks about Trump. She says, oh, you know, the media is stating that he's racist. So Trump has been known for these type of things, right? Yes, a lot of rappers talked about Trump because of, you know, what's perceived as his wealth, right? Him being a billionaire, right? I know the rapper Nas talked about on his song, Money Is My BRTCH. He says, you know, people expect to see us together like Trump and Marlon Mabel, right? That's when he was married then. But Trump has been known for some things. I think he was sued and even found guilty of a federal crime of not allowing minorities, particularly Black people, to own or rent his rental properties. We also know that the Central Park Five, when they were accused, Trump put out a full-page ad, I believe in the New York Times or the New York Post, advocating for them to be found guilty and giving the longest sentence possible, right? So this concept of this is something new that the media is pushing is not true. There have been numerous incidents in his past where he has been known to have engaged in inflammatory, insensitive, microaggression type language regarding Black people, particularly Black people, because that's what we're talking about here. Here, the movement speaks, we always bet on Black. So something to consider, but this is an example of course, her, I would argue, being disingenuous, playing slick and loose with the facts. And that's something that we, of course, want to make sure that we push back on when we're talking about arming our people with, of course, information
about him. And so I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him in 2016, but I wanted to just listen to what he actually said. And then when I saw what he was saying versus how it was being reported, I just found it to be extremely dishonest. So I started researching more, learning more. And then I got kind of angry, like just with the lies, because I do think Black Americans are intentionally manipulated emotionally by the media and, you know, kind of kept dumb but emotional intentionally by the school system. And I started reading up on like Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, a bunch of Black.
So right there, this is an issue, right? Because Candace Owens is one of the individuals that pushes back and argues that institutional racism doesn't exist. White supremacy is not a real thing. But then she just states that the school system intentionally dumbs down Black and keeps Black people in a position where they aren't able to think for themselves. Well, this is the same argument that Dr. Carnegie Woodson makes in his book, Miseducation of the Negro, right? So this is why we have to unpack and deconstruct her interview and what she's saying, right? So because I argue she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. On one interview, she says white supremacy isn't real, institutional racism doesn't exist. But then she says the school system prevents dumbs people, that Black people down, keeps them in a position where they're emotional and not thinking for themselves. Well, who runs the school system, and why are these individuals doing that, right? So she's being extremely disingenuous, right? And so this is why we have to deconstruct the arguments that she's making. But we're going to keep it moving.
Black scholars I originally had dismissed as Uncle Toms, and you know, irony now is I get called an Uncle Tom all the time. So I got what was coming, but yeah, and then I realized that actually I've always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. And economically speaking, of course, the conservative arguments make the most sense.
Does that bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
No, not at all. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero.
So once again, we got to tap in here. She's talking about Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? I've read the book. One of the things, And once again, she plays slick and loose with the facts, right? But the devil's in the details. In the book, yes, he was seen as a heroic figure, but the reason why he was an Uncle Tom was because as an African American, he was unable to distinguish his self-interest as a Black man from the interests of white people. He thought that the interests of white people coincided with his own interests as an African American. That's what made him an Uncle Tom. He was not able to distinguish between the two, right? And you can make the argument this is the case here with Candace Owens and many other Black Republicans that I will argue are inorganic Black Republicans, but we will get into that later. But once again, when we talk about Uncle Tom, according to the text, the book that she's talking about, was what? The fact that Uncle Tom in the book, the leading protagonist character, was unable to distinguish what was in his best interest as an African living in America from the self-interest, the best interest of whites, right? And we tend to find this with Black Republicans. They are unable to what? Disconnect the two. They think the interests of white people are the interests of Black people, right? And that's not the case. So in every situation. So we're going to tap back in, family.
But also because I get it. You know, how can I fault people for something that I would have engaged in for the majority of my life? I thought the same thing about Black conservatives. Like, I thought it was this betrayal, but I never actually understood it. It was just an emotional response. And I think that kind of is, if you come out of the public school system, I can't imagine how you could be a Black conservative when just the way that they even tell us our own history is just not true, you know?
Do you think that that's true with most people though? Like,
so once again, okay, she makes a compelling argument. They don't teach us our history correctly. Great, we all can agree with that. But then she doesn't provide examples of our history being taught incorrectly. But second, once again, she's arguing that the school system was behind this, but then we'll turn around and make the argument that what? Systemic or institutional racism doesn't exist. So you see she's being extremely disingenuous.
Like, you know, like when you think of a Trump or just anybody, you're fine with them, but then you learn like their politics, or you learn what they believe spiritually, and then you're like, you're turned off from it.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's necessarily the politics. I really do think the media plays the biggest part in it, because Trump, as far as I know, Trump's been, maybe he used to be a Democrat, but he's been a Republican and a conservative for a long time. I mean, we know he had to have been a conservative in terms of economics. You know, he's wealthy, so you'd be hard pressed to find someone that's wealthy and, you know, advocating for Marxist beliefs. But yeah, I just feel like it's more about the media wants power. The media has a vested interest in things politically, and they like to make us think that we're having this open conversation.
Very quickly, she said that you would be hard pressed to find someone who's wealthy who is advocating Marxist beliefs, right? So, you know, she's kind of name dropping that there, but she's really talking about socialism. And I could think of one, golly, what's the guy, the billionaire from Nebraska family? What is his name? He's from Omaha, same city as Warren Buffett, I believe is his name, right? So once again, something to consider. The other issue when people talk about, free market, that's a neoliberal paradigm that they're advocating for, in which all social issues are solved through capitalism, right? And so the issue is what they tend to do is, instead of having social programs address different issues, they would say, well, we would just let the market sort of stuff out, which means we're going to let the rich solve these problems and find a way to make more money. So just something to consider when why it's important that we unpack the arguments that she's making.
And we're learning the truth about people, but these are just hatchet smear jobs, libeling people, and I think deluding a ton of people to turn against their own best interests.
So were you more anti-media as opposed to being pro-Trump?
Well, no, I actually, once I actually heard what he had to say, I was like, that's a pretty solid pitch. I mean, it was his Dimondale, Michigan speech, particularly. He got up there and he just started listing all of the statistics in Black America in terms of poverty. I mean, these were just real statistics that he was talking about. And his pitch was basically like, you've been giving your vote to Democrats for 60 years. Why don't you just try something different? You know, I think that's a pretty good elevator pitch. Like, hey, you've been doing the same thing for a long time. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but why don't we try something different?
I don't think that's a great elevator pitch, right? To say, hey, you've been doing the same thing, try something different. No, you're going to need to tell me why I should vote for you, right? That's like me going up to a woman and say, hey, you've been married to this guy for 10 years, right? So just be with me. But I don't tell you what being with me would actually get you, So no, I don't think that's a good elevator pitch at all, right? And I'm simply being objective, right? Matter of fact, to show you how objective I am, when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump, I can recall it was 2016, probably late October 2016, a Clinton advocate surrogate came to my home. Brother John Jackson says, love the dual streams with Becoline. You gained a new subscriber. I appreciate that, Brother John Jackson. I understand your views on Sister Candace, but we want to stay away from rape epithets, brother. But I do know what a Negro peon is, someone who has their feet in both worlds, ideologically, culturally, etc. But let's stay away from epithets, but I definitely appreciate you coming in, tapping in, and being a subscriber, brother. And I hope that you can, of course, tap in later and be part of the conversation. Right. And so the lady said, well, we can't vote for Trump. He's bad. Da, 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 da. And I said, no. If you want to get my vote, you should be telling me why I should vote for Hillary based on what policies she's going to implement to benefit my community. So I'm like that, irrespective of what party the candidate is from, right? Democrat or Republican, you need to tell me what your policies are. I could give a damn. You can't just use a smear campaign to get me not to vote for the other person, right? So that's the standard I hold people to. Irrespective of their political party. So just something to consider. And she's not holding that standard. Hey, he just says, hey, vote for me. What else? What you got to lose? And doesn't tell us what it is what policies he's going to implement. So extremely problematic. But that's why I said I wanted to do this live stream and of course deconstruct her interview with the Breakfast Club
and see if it gets better for you. And then suddenly I flipped over to CNN and it was Don Lemon's crying. I think it was maybe being, but it was just, they were so dramatic and they were lying about what he said. They're like, he looked you in the face and told you you were poor. I'm like, that's not what he did at all. Mm-hmm. So I just got interested. I'm a very curious, interested person. If I get interested in something, I will just take it all the way, read books. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Why are all the media companies that I believed my whole life just lying about it? Just say what he actually said and let Black Americans decide for themselves if that's a good enough.
So here's the other thing, and this goes back to her being disingenuous. She says all the media companies that she believes, so she's speaking of basically CNN, maybe MSNBC, where she's saying that they're Michael Watts, right? They're chopping and screwing what a person says, editing it, collating it, then repackaging it to suit their interest. Fox News does that all the time. I give you all an example. This was years ago. There was a brother who was served in the military, Black man. He was a Republican, and they brought him on the channel, on the platform, and they were talking about Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, this is probably 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago, Bill Cosby was speaking positively to Black Muslims with some of the Nation of Islam in terms of the morals and, so on and so forth in that community. And so they brought the brother on, and it was like, what is Bill Cosby talking about? And they said, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. The Muslims I know are cutting people's heads off, beheading people, and all this type of stuff, talking about what's going on with the Taliban, Afghanistan, etc. And so I said they're being extremely disingenuous. They knew. And so then of course, the headline was Bill Cosby supports Taliban, when they knew he was talking about the Nation of Islam. So once again, J Africa, peace, Black African family, absolutely. They knew that he was talking about the Nation of Islam, but they painted it to make it look like he was talking about the Taliban, people blowing up buildings, running airplanes in the buildings, etc., Al-Qaeda, right? So Fox News does the same thing. So once again, she's being extremely disingenuous. But let's go right ahead.
Enough pitch. They may have said no. I thought it was interesting, but the lying is something that I think is outrageous. It's gotten out of control.
I think it's worse now. I think it's worse now because not only do you have people who will just create the headlines based off what they feel you said as opposed to what you said. You have people that will just straight up manipulate your audio, manipulate your video, just to push a narrative.
One of the wildest things, the craziest things that people say about me all the time, and it drives me crazy because it's literally made up. They're like, Candace said racism doesn't exist. If you go find that headline of Candace says racism doesn't exist, they didn't put it in quotation marks because I never said it. They were like, Candace said racism doesn't exist because she's quote unquote never been a slave. The words never been a slave came out of my mouth, but I never said racism doesn't exist. And it was in the context of an entire speech. The media knew that Black people were not going to go watch the speech or try to find the original speech. They were just going to read the headline and react and be like, oh my God, Candace Owens said racism.
So very quickly, two things. One, she says, oh, the media knew Black people weren't going to do X, Y, Z. So she's also throwing shade at Black people, stating that Black people are intellectually lazy, right? So Black people aren't going to actually do any research. black people are just going to go off what the media says. So she's throwing shade at black people. Number two, you are being disingenuous and you're making a comment that insinuates that racism doesn't exist by stating, hey, you know what? I was never a slave, right? So the devil, once again, is in the details, right? So there's a lot that I would argue that the Breakfast Club, the cast are missing, the hosts are missing. But I think part of that is because they aren't actually intellects, academics, they're entertainers, right? And so she's able to kind of get these things off, same as when Umar Johnson was on the show and he made a number of claims that were patently false, but they don't actually know these things, right? So they're able to get that off. But I, of course, am in the know. This is why we're deconstructing her interview on the Breakfast Club. But we're going to continue.
Doesn't exist. Like, how could she say this? She's a hypocrite. She's a liar. This happened to her in her childhood.
Yeah, you sued your high school for racism.
Yeah,
So
well,
clearly,
it's actually not that's not what happened. I didn't sue my high school for racism.
For
But
not protecting you during that time, I said, right?
Hmm?
They said for not protecting you. They
I
said
just did you what the media does.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
no, it's fine. I mean, I get it because it's something that I've talked about at length. But essentially, I had the situation happen to me in high school where somebody that I was actually best friends with left me horrific voicemails. They were racist voicemails. There's no other way to slice it.
They called you a nigga because you didn't want to date him.
No, he actually, I think he was gay, to be honest. It was nothing about dating. I think this was kind of a circumstance of like, I had my first beer. I'll be honest, I got a boyfriend and I just stopped hanging out with my friends. Very typical high school, stupid stuff. And this gay guy that I was friends with was like outraged by it. And one night he was out drinking with kids that were way younger than him that I had never met. And they left me horrific voicemails. I mean, like bringing in like Rosa Parks. There were tons of threats.
They did what?
They were just like it was like it was there was no way to slice it, but it was they were extremely racist and it was terrifying too because I didn't know who the phone calls were coming from. Long story short, one of the kids in the car happened to be the governor of Connecticut's son, so it became this sort of overnight political story. And while it was going on and there were like news cameras in front of the school, I left school and just homeschooled for I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks. And basically we got reimbursed for the time that I was homeschooling is what happened. But yeah, so when people retell that story now, it's like she sued her school for racism and the NAACP helped her. And I'm like, no, the NAACP did not help me. They used my face and my name to fundraise for the NAACP, which is actually the reason why I don't like the NAACP. It's like a very valid reason because I was a little girl, I was 16, 17 years old. And it was a really hard situation to go through as a child. I'm not like I am now, 34 years old and married with that support system. It was kind of fame you don't want, but I'm actually very grateful that it happened to me because it allowed me to really consider what the media was. Even though I was still a liberal, I knew what the media was. Like I knew the media was all about selling a headline. I knew then I got an early lesson in the NAACP. I think organizations that never want racism to go away, because how are they going to fundraise? Like if you're a CEO of the NAACP and you're earning X amount of dollars, you got to keep the racism narrative going on or you're going to work yourself out of business. So the stuff that I talk about is always.
She might have a point there. But I think one of the issues is also rebuke and reproof says CNN, MSNBC is fake news. You could say so is Fox News. They promote a lot of misinformation as well. So if you're going to be honest, we got to stay that across the board. Lion says opportunist and conservative puppet Candace Owens. So make sure you tap in when I open things up and we have this conversation about why you're making an argument. But one of the arguments a lot of civil rights organizations make is that, okay, we want to be able to overcome racism and we can focus on other issues in terms of having something to fight for rather than something simply to fight against.
Always based on my experiences, and so it's just crazy to see how it gets manipulated in the press.
Now, you said something earlier. You said that you wanted to listen to what Trump had to say. You said in 2016, you still didn't vote for him. So looking at the country now, right? Of course, there's Trump, there's Biden. Who do you think is better for our community?
Obviously, well, first and foremost, just for everybody, you should have a president that's, not mentally deteriorating like Biden is. I mean, he's in full mental deterioration. It's crazy to pretend anything else that's happening right now. It's scary first and foremost because we have real enemies out there, and you have a person that can't lead. He can't remember what he ate for breakfast. He's saying things. I mean, the amount of times that he keeps talking about his dead son as if he's alive. It's very alarming, and I don't say that with any ill will in my heart either, because he's showing signs of when my grandfather, who passed a couple of years ago, started, his mind started diminishing and you start to see those early signs of dementia, the way he walks, his gait, the way that he's falling, that this is crazy. Everyone should be outraged, whether you're on the left or the right. But in terms of the better candidate for Black Americans, I asked people the question, how were you living under Trump? The person that they told you was going to put us back into chains and we were all going to be slaves again. How was the economy under Trump? And how are you doing today? And every time you ask that question, everyone knows that they were living better under Trump because he was deregulating the environment, and people were just living better under Trump. And he is, in my opinion, a better president because at least he's telling you the truth and he's telling you what he actually thinks. You know, one of the things that I
So very quickly, she says people are living better under Trump. My life didn't get any better under Trump, but she doesn't provide any metrics, any data to substantiate that. She could say, okay, people are living better because their life expectancy was higher. People are living better because the median income went up. People are living better because unemployment, or like provide some metrics rather than just rhetoric to substantiate the claim that you're making. And she's not able to do that, right? And so once again, you have to make the argument that she doesn't have an actual leg to stand on because she can't provide examples to substantiate the claim that people are actually living better under the presidency of Donald J. Trump.
I hated the most about him when he first came down the escalator. I was like, oh, he's way too brash. You know, Obama sounds way more polite. But I asked the question, do you want to be politely lied to or have somebody that's at least telling you what they think about you in no uncertain terms? So, you know, I like Trump for a ton of reasons. And for me, it was always about the economic argument. And I knew that he was going to be a better candidate for Black Americans because of that, especially, you know, build the wall sounded so wild, right? Back in 2016, it sounded wild. It sounded xenophobic. And I was saying, if these illegals get into the inner city communities, the first people that are going to be harmed are going to be Black Americans.
People actually were mad at you, right? When you got into the conversation with T.I. at the Revolt Music Conference, right? And you were saying that, and people didn't understand it, but it seems like people are understanding what you were trying to say back then.
Yeah, and I am so happy to have those moments because, like, I think T.I. is a trash person. You know, I'll say that 1,000 times over because, first and foremost, I had spoken to T.I. prior to that event. Like, T.I. was the only person on stage that I actually knew, and for the same reasons that I met you. Kanye had put us in touch. We had talked, and I know that T.I. thinks more conservatively. So he was literally putting on a show. And so it just makes me wonder, especially with all the stuff that, like, came out in the Diddy lawsuit, like, who's controlling T.I.? Because that was wild. He was literally putting on a show like he didn't know me on stage. Like, he was surprised I was saying the stuff. He was way more level-headed and rational when we were on the phone. And I still look back on the moment. I'm like, what was he doing? It was like a circus act up there. And he was doing something that I thought was harmful because we were actually having a great discussion. And yet he created a little moment, and that was all the media ran with.
So I recall the Revolt roundtable or panel discussion that they had. I don't think it was a circus. I don't know. She said she knows him personally, but she did. Like he said, she started with some bullshit. And I think even if it was someone I knew, if they said something like that, I would have told them privately as well as personally, that's unacceptable. The issue was she was making light of the enslavement of African people, right? She stated that America was one of the first countries to abolish slavery. People began to boo. She said, why are you all booing the fact? But the thing is, America was not one of the first nations to abolish slavery. They were one of the last, right? But once again, she was making light of the enslavement of African people. This is one of the we tend to find go-to talking points of Black conservatives, particularly contemporary Black conservatives, is that they make light of the historical and continuing racialized oppression, the racial oppression of African people, right? So something to consider. They always make light of that, and they tend to have a sickening level of racial deference to whites. So this is just something that we can continue to unpack as we watch, family. But if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button and the notification bell, and be a blessing to the show. You can, of course, support us at Cash App at $ Lumumba Speaks. So let's keep it moving.
Despite the fact we were on that stage for hours, they ran with that moment, and I was really upset about it. But you're right. I was talking a lot about illegal immigration and saying this is something that we need to pay attention to, because eventually the Black vote's not going to matter. Something that they worked so hard for is not going to matter. They get enough illegals in. What are we at? 10 million under Biden. And they're doing it intentionally. Like, it's going to be the same thing that they did to Black Americans in the 60s. What Lyndon Baines Johnson did when he established welfarism and the Great Society Act. They want to get these people in, offer them handouts, and turn them into economic slaves that will continue to vote for Democrats because they're getting free handouts. And it's incredibly racist, first and foremost, but because Black Americans are still, a lot of Black Americans, I should say, are still living under this deception that Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think is rather curious here when we talk about Candace Owens' talking points, and as well as the talking points of most Black Republicans nowadays, contemporary Black Republicans, is racism only exists when the Democratic Party is engaging in it. Any other time you bring up racism, they're going to tell you that you're seeking to be a victim. In fact, Candace Owens stated when she was asked, when she gave a vociferous critique of Black Lives Matter, the organization and the protesters, she stated that these were simply people who were childlike, who were protesting because they were trying to make up the fact. Once again, this is a quote. They were pretending that they were oppressed and they were protesting because they wanted attention. This is something that she stated. So when Black people were being brutalized, killed by the police, ensnared by the carceral state, right, the victims of extrajudicial violence, victims of white vigilantism, Black people are simply what? Seeking attention because they're childlike cretins. But if the Democratic Party does something, then racism actually exists. So you see she's being disingenuous. She isn't able to actually be level-headed and look things right down the middle. I would argue she's simply being a talker. She's simply a mouthpiece for what? The Republican Party. But let's keep it moving. Dr. Mott, I hope you could tap in, sister, when we open things up. Red, Black, and Green, Black Power, absolutely. I hope, of course, you have subscribed to both channels, Be Kalon Network, and, of course, The Movement Speaks, and hit the like button as well as the notification bell.
Johnson was a good president, even though he wasn't a avowed racist. I mean, he hated Black people. I mean, one of the, so many times, I mean, hard R referring to us as the N-word. I'll have those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years. And this man is being hailed as a hero because he had to sign the Civil Rights Act, essentially with a figurative gun to his head because the country was on fire. JFK had just died, and there were riots in the streets protesting because of racism, and he did not want to sign it, but he did. And with the other hand, he signed the Great Society Act and incentivized welfareism and, programs to incentivize not marrying Black men. To think that we had government agents knocking on the door, going into the homes of Black women and being like, there better not be a man that lives here. We're just here to check to make sure. If you want this, check.
Right. So rebuke and reprove states the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. So one, American politics in general was the party of slavery, right? Both parties, under both presidential administrations, Republican and Democrat, supported chattel enslavement. Number two, a good example would be Abraham Lincoln. He said he didn't care about Black people being enslaved or being free. In fact, he even said that he believed that Black people, were inferior. All he cared about was saving the Union. Jim Crow was both, of course, Republican and Democrat. Eugenics, both Republican and Democrat. Abortion, you're going to make the argument once again, both Republican and Democrat. But we don't talk about the Republican Party being complicit in what? Black codes. We don't talk about the Republican Party being complicit in Jim Crow. Most people don't talk about the Republican Party being complicit with the Compromise of 1877 that led to the nadir of race relations, in which anti-Black racism was at its zenith. And then, of course, as a result, Black people had virtually no rights whatsoever, right? So a lot to unpack, but this is what we're talking about when individuals play this left or right. I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. They aren't thinking in terms of Black interests. They're able to be, of course, manipulated. So it's something to consider, right? Yes, they were Democratic officials, right? But once again, these people were racist. And when the Great Society Act, when the Civil Rights Act, although Civil Rights Act came, Malcolm X talked about them being Dixiecrats, and they left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party, right? This is under Nixon in after the 68 election, Law and Order. They left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party. So if you're going to tell the history, we want to make sure we tell the entire history and not be disingenuous. No, Abraham Lincoln was a racist, right? He was a racist, and he only freed slaves enslaved African Americans because he was trying to win, of course, the war. No, this big switch is not a lie. That is something that actually happened and is documented and verified. That is not a lie, right? Another example where we talk about this issue of, well, we're going to get back to Candace Owens and we can unpack that later.
Dad can't be home. Every other ill that Black America is facing today is because we've removed fathers from the home. So I'm like a big, I use my platform to talk about men a lot and the need for male leadership, everything that is so harmful. This, Me Too, false feminism, all of this crap. It's anti-man, and it's anti-man for a reason, because a society cannot survive without strong men. A household cannot survive without strong men. We need strong men to lead homes. And so the fracturing of the Black family, I think, was the test. Like we were the mice in the experiment. Like, let's see how that goes. And now they're kind of doing that writ large. And I hate feminism so much. I can't even tell you, because what it's about is it's just an attack on men.
Oh, you just said a lot, Candace. So let's talk about some of these things.
But I love
Now,
it.
you said a lot. Now with the politicians, right? Whether it's Lyndon B. Johnson, Trump, Biden, I think people are able to ignore a lot of their BS as long as they can get something done.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. So that's why I don't even like to talk about the person. I like to talk about the policy. So what is the difference between traditional?
Right. So Pan-Africanists and people that really care about the liberation of Black people look beyond the two-party system. Agreed 100%. J Africa, I'm going to let you tap in. Bag 7-6 first. Happy you're back here, brother. After 1964, Strong Thurman was one of the first to deflect to the Republican Party. Facts. So something to be considered. Once again, rebuke and reprove. I have a degree in African American studies, right? I have the literature behind me to substantiate these claims. I don't care about documentaries, because oftentimes in documentaries, they, of course, are promoting misinformation. They're promoting their agenda and not the actual facts, right? So I don't tend to watch documentaries because I know the information before I even watch the documentary. But Democrats did leave the Democratic Party, particularly after all the civil rights bills were passed, and they deflected to the Republican Party. This is an actual fact. And in fact, the Nixon administration courted them through what the advocacy of law and order in the 1968 presidential campaign.
Conservatives in MAGA.
Well, I would say between traditional conservatives and MAGA.
Yeah, like before what the Conservative Party was before MAGA and what it is now.
Yeah, so I think what you're describing is that there was this fracture in the conservative movement, because people realized that when he was referring to the swamp, what he meant was it didn't actually matter if you were on the left or the right. They were all working together in DC and selling out all of America. I mean, there is no reason why you go to DC and become a multimillionaire. You're supposed to be there to serve the American people. You're there taking our tax dollars. So what was happening was these lobbying interests, like, Big Pharma goes down and they lobby and they'll offer money to a candidate to go push a drug, like the COVID vaccine. Or they'll lobby for war. It's like, biggest lobby, of course, military industrial complex. So we're all suffering. You're going to work because these lobbyists are getting their incentives done by buying out these politicians. And so Trump kind of hit the scene as somebody who wasn't bought and paid for because he didn't need their money. He wasn't like a random congressman going to DC with no money. And he just started talking about the swamp. Like, it's not even Republican or Democrat. And I want people to wake up to that, because I'm not here like ride or die for Republicans. They all sell us out. Like, the stuff that they did during COVID is criminal. It's criminal. And
expound on that.
I mean, the free handouts. First off, trillions of dollars you're signing these omnibus bills. If you read into it, where that money is going, it's insane. I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him.
So, number one, she argues they all sell us out. This is the first time she's ever said that, but she's not being honest. She's once again being disingenuous, because she created Blexit, and the goal was to get Black people to deflect from the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party. That was the whole movement she created, right? So this argument that, oh no, they both sell us out. I'm not a Republican. I'm just pro-Trump. It's false, right? Go look up the information, right? Rebuke and Return. Did you notice none of your books carry name any? They never name the names of officials who switched, and neither will you. Well, actually, no. The books I've read have, right, and I'm not lying, right? So I've done the research, right? This was what was known as the Southern Strategy under, of course, Nixon, right? So once again, we're going to keep it moving.
Person. I like to talk about.
Always look at the candidates that are running, and any person that is running saying that they want to grow government is your enemy.
Why do you think people?
So this is another issue where she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. She says, I'm not for any party, but anybody who wants to grow government is your enemy. But there's only one party that doesn't believe in big government. That's Republican. But then she says, guess what? I'm not for any party. I just look at the policies. So she's being disingenuous. Secondly, there have been a number of times in which growing government was beneficial to American citizens. The first was FDR's Great Society, where people were unemployed, going to soup kitchens to get food. FDR said, what we're going to do is we're going to create large public works programs to do what? Put American citizens back to work. So they have people building bridges, building roads, building dams, etc., that put people back to work. So that was one example of growing government being beneficial, right? The second, and I can think of, is the implementation of free breakfast for children, right? So growing government was beneficial, right? You can think of the GI Bill, you can think of the Pell Grant, right? These are examples of growing government that was actually beneficial to what? American citizens, right? So she's being disingenuous, but you can't paint with a broad brush. There have been times where more government programs benefited people, allow them to go to college and receive an education that put them in a position to what? Then get a degree and have a better livelihood, right? Because they couldn't afford to. So once again, she's painting with a broad brush, being extremely disingenuous.
Give you a lot of backlash for questioning people and having questions. I see all the time with Charlemagne, if we question something that Kamala Harris did, or question something that Joe Biden did, or question somebody that's Democrat did, why do you think our people have so much backlash when you ask so many questions?
Well, because I think that they don't realize that they've been manipulated against their own interests. And a lot of it is, when you start telling the truth, you become a problem to the establishment, right? So if you're the military industrial complex and you want people to just kind of sleepwalk into another war, and I'm sitting here telling you that, Pentagon just can't keep finding the trillions of dollars that they send overseas. They've got this budget and they're sending all this money to Ukraine. And then they say, oh, we don't know where all the money went. It's being laundered and it's being sent back to a very small group of powerful people. And so when you have someone like me who's cutting through all of the emotional arguments, you have to turn that person into persona non grata, right? And what better way to do it than to have their own community attacking them and saying that they're, pro-white or anti-Black. I mean, it's a nonsense things that they say about me. If you listen to what I'm actually saying, I'm sitting here providing a blueprint for Black Americans to get ahead because it's time, okay? It's time. We've been doing this for a very long time in this country. Black America, wake up, okay? They don't like you. They don't like us, okay? There's
so you're not anti-Black.
America
government.
There's government.
America.
Yeah, like the government, the American government. Why would you think the American government wants to help you? Well, at what point in history has that proven to be right? And I'll challenge that and I'll make it wider to all Americans. When has it ever been the circumstance that you felt that the government really just was out for your own best interests? Think of them as a corporation. They want to grow themselves. They want new departments, bigger departments, larger budgets like any other corporation would want. And they never want to leave DC because we don't have term limits, which we should have, right? If we had term limits and said, you can only serve for 4 years, well, then guess what they would be doing for those 4 years? Trying to shrink government because they'd have to come back out and be us, right? When you look at the way that you're...
So I think this is another example where she's being disingenuous because there are term limits, right? Well, no, there aren't term limits in terms of Congress and the Senate. So she's right about that. I apologize. So we're going to keep it moving. She is right about that.
Tax dollars are being spent. You should be outraged. You should be angry, but stop thinking that the enemy is, they can't.
But the issue is, she talks about, okay, they were taking this money and giving it to rich folk, but she doesn't name these individuals, the entities, right? So, as I think Beanie Siegel said, either name some names or you're gossiping, right? So if you're going to make these claims, and they are rather audacious to say the least, then you need to be able to substantiate these claims by naming names, right? That's the reality.
Constantly have us arguing against each other, women versus men, Black versus white, it's a nonsense. The reason why they want us constantly warring is because it distracts from all of us coming together and taking a look at who the real criminals are. And the real criminals are this small group, this small cadre of powerful people that I think we're virtually all still on a plantation. They just made it look nice. You got a nice chair. We got nice chairs here. But I think we're all still on a plantation.
Shut up. It's for a baby shower. So is this the reason why I haven't really heard you pushing people to vote for any particular candidate this go around?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very clear about the fact I let everything play out, but I absolutely love Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously, he's not running anymore, but his ideas and his laser sharp focus on what the actual issues were, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I'm obviously voting for Trump. We were all doing better under Trump. It's that simple. I don't care what else they have to say, the libels, the smears. I get it. You do it to me. So I just don't even pay attention. I actually find it to be quite boring now,
What economically, what were the reasons? Because, you said that, you didn't like that Republicans were giving out money during 2020.
Both. They were just giving out money during COVID. It was crazy.
But that's what a lot of people loved. They loved the stimulus checks. They loved the PPP. So
now here's the issue. Like she has an issue with the fact that they were giving out money during COVID, but who was giving out? What presidential administration was in office when they were giving out money during COVID? It was Trump. So it's like, what are we talking about here? Trump was the one who was in office, right? So, yeah, it's once again, wow, it's just wild, man.
So when you say you were doing better under Trump, that's what people point to. But look at the circumstances it took for that to happen. You don't want to have to go through another pandemic in order to get that money.
Yeah, but the point is that should provide you a lesson how the government works, because people weren't even thinking ahead. You're like, yeah, I'm getting this free check, so I'm not going to work. Again, incentivizing poor behavior. What ended up happening was a lot of the mom and pop stores closed. Right, a lot of businesses actually had to fold because they couldn't sustain it under the economic environment. They just couldn't thrive.
So once again, she's being disingenuous. There was a shutdown. There was a lockdown. They shut down society. This is a virus. I think it was airborne. So nobody was going to work. Nobody was working, right? But they wasn't just pumping out checks. It wasn't like you were getting unemployment benefits. I believe you got 1 or 2 checks, right? And even then, in many states, there were moratoriums on even paying rent because they said, well, people aren't going to work. People can't go to work. Then guess what? Then what we're going to do is people can't pay their bills, right? So she's being disingenuous because, I mean, people weren't able to work because of the shutdown.
Employees did not want to go to work. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening is the individuals get weaker and the corporations got bigger, right? Only the corporations could have survived in that environment, which is what unfortunately ended up happening. And then we put our own selves on the hook to be taxed into oblivion, to keep paying into this ridiculous thing that we agreed to pay into. It would have been much better for us to instead say, I'm happy to work. I don't want your small check. I want you to stop taking tax dollars from me. Shrink government, don't make it bigger. That always has to be the economic narrative. If you want to make government bigger, you are taking from me. Government does not make money. We make money, right? Government can only take money. So when you're advocating for more government solutions, you are literally advocating for the government to come into your check and take more money from you.
Lord, that makes so. But how were people better under Trump though? Like, what are some things that you can point to?
Well, I mean, like I said, common sense. Everybody was living better under Trump, but just in terms of the environment for people that were entrepreneurial, definitively one of the first things he did was he started slashing regulations, like, slashing these barriers that prevent people who want to go into business from starting a business, because they learned that there's all of these government agencies that are, you got to get this in place, you got to get this in place, you have to get this license. That's government agencies that are actually standing between you and starting a company. And so on his very first day, he was just like cutting regulations left and right, saying, throw this one out, throw this one out, throw this one out, which freed up the markets. At the end of the day, what I am is I'm a free market capitalist. Free the markets, allow people to compete fairly, stop allowing the government to stop people or, de-incentivize them from creating new jobs. I'll give you an example. A cousin of mine wanted to start a food truck. Great, awesome. Would love for you to do that. And he looked into like how many certifications and barriers there were before he could actually start the food truck. That is the government growing powerful. Essentially, you have to have money or you have to know somebody to play the game.
So once again, completely false, right? We're talking about regulation. So you start a food truck, right? You purchase the truck. You have to have an inspector come out. Just like if you go to a restaurant, you have people, inspectors, county inspectors that would go to make sure that, okay, you have the proper refrigeration materials, right? Right. The regulations are to protect the workers and consumers. She's not being honest about that. I agree 100%, right? The same as if you go to a restaurant, they're gonna say, okay, your freezer has to get this cold. The refrigerator has to be at this temperature, right? You have to have this much space in between X, Y, Z. If not, you can't open your restaurant. It's going to be closed down. It's to protect the workers and the consumers. Absolutely. So she's being disingenuous there, right? And so I argue oftentimes what we tend to find as individuals do not like regulations because they have a predatory nature about themselves. They don't want, of course, oversight, right? We find this when you go to the gas pump. Each year you have like the county auditor goes and makes sure that the gas pumps are properly charging you so that, you aren't being ripped off by the person who owns the business, right? So it's American Rifleman says she's talking about over regulation. Well, when we start the live where we actually tap in, I would need you to actually provide an example of what overregulation is. Right? If you could provide some examples of overregulation, but once again, she's speaking in broad terms and she's not providing details, right? Because anytime you start a business, in fact, it's very easy to start a business here in Ohio. And we have, right, all you got to do is go pay $50 and file your information with the Secretary of State. Boom, you get in the mail, boom, now you can start your business. You have an EIN number. So it's not difficult to start a business, but if you're going to build, if you want to get into construction, there are certain laws, right, in terms of, okay, building regulations. That way, so if, you know, the building doesn't collapse after you build it, right, and people die, right? So regulations are important, right? So she's being disingenuous.
For you to be able to start from nothing and make something of yourself. Economic mobility is really what it's about. So, I mean, that was one of the things that I loved the most about Trump, is that he was very sensible. He has a very good business head. He understands the business environment, and every person should want to, you know, should be aspiring not to work for a bunch of people that don't have your best interests, but to
I
be
agree
able.
with that, but so many of his businesses have failed, though.
Yeah, but even failing is a part of the things that I've tried to do have failed,
Yeah.
right? And I don't ever let that be a barrier. Like, I think that there's always this psychological mindset of people that are fearful to fail. That's the best way for things to happen, because you learn so much in failure. And people always want to point to and mock somebody for failing. Like, oh, she tried to do this and then she failed. Well, at least she tried.
Yeah.
Right? What are you doing?
And everybody
And I
has
think-
losses. Everybody
Yeah,
takes
and you
losses.
learn from them. You grow from those losses, you know, and that's another. Yeah, that's the thing that really bothers me too. Is like that psychological conditioning of like, well, what's the point in trying because you might fail? It's like, no, you should try and you might fail, and then you'll learn. And the next time you try, you might make something of yourself.
We see that in the cannabis industry where it costs so much to even get in the industry, why you see not a lot of minorities in the cannabis industry. But I want to talk about the business that you tried to open that you couldn't get because there was so many regulations against you. I thought it would have been a great business. Now that's the one where you can actually find out the person trolling you or talking shit about you online, talking fake news, and you could actually find who they were. What happened with
No, so that was actually, this was crazy. So I actually never got to start the business that I wanted to do. It was this, I was creating this, I wanted to create an app called Social Autopsy. And I wanted to create it. It was actually really misguided, but it was because of what happened to me in high school. Like, I thought that it was really harsh that those kids, some of them are really young, ended up getting arrested because their names got publicized, and they got arrested for a hate crime, and it ended up ruining a lot of those kids' lives. Like, a lot of them had suicide attempts. I heard that one of them ended up changing their names. It's just a little too young for us to be smearing and libeling people. Kids are dumb. We all got the ability to be able to grow up and be stupid and say dumb stuff without social media, which is like, I think that was like glory for us, because I can't imagine if like things that I thought in the middle school were on Twitter and people could pull it up and be like, you're not allowed to have a life.
Speak for yourself. Men mature slower than everybody.
Yeah.
That's true. It took me a while. Some of mine's still on the internet.
Yeah, but I think it's unfair. And I think that a lot of times we're all talking from this castle of like, oh, these kids are horrible people because he said whatever when he was 12 or 13. It's like, you don't have to live through what those kids are living through with social media. But I wanted to create this app that would help them, because rather than them having to get like arrested for saying something, like there could maybe be like a school could, make it a part of their academic record or something else. It was extremely misguided, but my heart was in the right place. But
So Brother Jay, K. Brown says her MO was to use ambiguous language and lies of omission to confuse and mislead people. I think we tend to find that for individuals on both sides, Republican, Democrat, assimilationist, nationalist, conservative. We tend to find this, where individuals lie by omission, use ambiguous language, right, to confuse people and try to get people to, take on their position. So I think you're absolutely right there.
Before I could even launch it, I put up a Kickstarter because I didn't have money to fund it. The Kickstarter got taken down because they said that this would be doxing, and it was actually a really wild situation. But it was just I was kickstarting a fund for it. But I'm glad it didn't take off, because now I realize why people think that it would have been really bad for free speech if that had happened.
Why?
Well, they think, now when you look at this environment and see how people are treated when they say one thing 10 years ago, could you imagine if there was a whole app that had that? It would have been used for evil. It really would have been.
I want
to go back to something.
I agree with her there 100%. I think she's right about that. So I agree.
You said earlier, because I know a lot of people will hear you say, well, Candace, you're speaking a lot about the black family, but then you married a white man.
Yeah,
Dr. Umar would have a huge problem with that.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Dr. Umar?
I have heard of him. I have not listened to him, I'll be honest. What is his argument, actually? If you could just repurpose his argument
He
for me.
feels that,
Everything black.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Every damn
No,
thing.
he feels black men should be with black women because when you're talking about it from an economic standpoint, you want to grow the wealth as a black family.
But that doesn't...
And if you marry somebody from another race, then, your wealth will be with that person, and he doesn't like that.
Okay. I would love to talk to him more about that because, I mean, it's always very interesting to me to hear this paradox of black people who will make an argument that, the system is racist, and then also make an argument like this, which is essentially making an argument for the Supreme Court to revisit Virginia versus Love and basically say that black Americans and white Americans shouldn't be marrying. I think the greatest thing ever is when people come together on the basis of who they love and get married,
So yeah, we got to unpack that, right? So number one, when you talk about Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, one of the core tenets of Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism is anti-interracial marriage, anti-miscegenation, right? From an economic standpoint, Dr. Umar Johnson is absolutely right. We understand that, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, that one of the major issues that we face as a people, not only here in America, but globally, is the maldistribution of resources. Well, if you gain resources, and then you marry someone of another race or ethnic background, you're then sharing those resources with another racial ethnic group rather than it benefiting your actual community. One of the best examples I could think of contemporarily is that of what Kobe Bean Bryant, right? I think he was close to being a billionaire. And that, of course, that money went to the Latino community. His wife was using that to benefit the Latino community, Latino initiatives, so on and so forth. And we know Kobe's parents were so upset. They were extremely upset about the fact that, of course, they were actually in conscience regarding that. Right? They became apoplectic, the fact that who said that? So several. When we talk about what the tenet of Pan-Africanism, there were several. Garvey did say that, right? And I have the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey behind me. Also, the first written Black nationalist Pan-Africanist manifesto, David Walker's Appeal, he makes an argument on page 9 of the text in 1829. So this is one of the core tenets of Pan-Africanism, of Black nationalism going all the way back to the early 19th century. So yes, that is true 100%, right? Yes. So, and it is disingenuous to make an argument about you care about the Black family. And we tend to find this with a lot of integrationists, people on the left, and Republicans, conservatives, people on the right, Black people on the right, to where they care so much about the Black community, but they don't care enough about Black people to actually be in a relationship with one. So that's something to consider, right? In terms of you're saying one thing, but doing another. And when I had the chance to meet Dr. Hakyar Matabuti, one of the things he taught me was what? Before you go off what anyone says, first look at what they do. And so my position as a Pan-Africanist, particularly in terms of when we echoing the wisdom of our great ancestor and master teacher, Dr. John Henry Clark, is this: when you go over there, you stay over there. You don't get to go over there and then still try to have an influence and a concern for the issues in our community, because you aren't part of our community anymore. You've divested so you can stay over there.
For me personally, I never thought of my husband as a race. This is very interesting to me that see people go, she's married to a white man. When I look at my kids, I'm not like, oh, my kids are mixed. I married the person that it made the most sense for me to marry. I have a mind that is.
So once again, she's being disingenuous because she's been on numerous platforms where she stated, my children are biracial, right? In fact, her show, I think when she had Dr. Lamont Hill on, Mark Lamont Hill, when she made this statement. So to say that, oh, she doesn't see race and all this, she's once again been extremely disingenuous because she's made these comments before about the race of her children and them not being Black and that they're biracial. So the fact that she says, well, I don't see her husband as a race, is completely false. Completely false. And the second issue is, if you are someone who has racial pride, right, someone who believes in unapologetically betting on Black, so okay, well, America First, right, for me, you identify as American. But here at Lumumba Speaks, here at Bequaline Network, we identify we are African family first, not American. We're African family first. So you see that we had a divide ideologically because you view yourself as an American, we view ourselves as African. So as a result of that, our premises are going to be different.
Is just, if you even knew half the things that I'm thinking about, the stuff that I'm reading, just go all the time. It's difficult for me to find. It was difficult for me to find a partner that was a challenge to me. The challenge that I needed, whether you want to say an academic challenge, whatever it is. with my same interests.
Mhm.
It just was. What you will know, a lot of times people think that when people come together, it's because of how they look. Actually, I actually read this in a Thomas Sowell book, or maybe it was a Shelby Steele book. People tend to marry their IQ, which is interesting.
Mm.
You think like if you see two Black people together, oh, it's because they are two Black people, but actually they are probably better matched based on their IQ. I fell in love with my husband just because I think he is one of the most brilliant people ever. I love him very much. The stuff that we talk about, I'm like, there is no other person that I could.
So once again, so I got to cut that out. No, well, first off, you're not going to call me a liar because you wouldn't say that to my face. So we're gonna kill that, right? As I stated before, when you come on my platform, you don't attack the person, you attack the argument. American is my nationality. African is my race and my ethnicity, right? So I'm gonna tell you this one time and one time again. You attack the argument, not the person. Because if you attack me again, I'm gonna give you my phone number, then we can meet up and we can get in the boxing ring and we can go as many rounds as you like. I don't play those type of games. This isn't Dinah's show. I don't allow the people come on here and to be disrespectful. Okay, so you got that. This is the last time I'm gonna tell you that America's First Rifleman, AFR. Or you can get my phone number, and when my shoulder heals up, we can get in the boxing ring and we go as many rounds as you want. No ad hominems. You attack the argument a person's making, not the person themselves. So the issue I was going to bring up is psychologists will even tell you that most people are going to marry, or at least their first attraction is going to be, they're going to be first and foremost be with a person based on if they're physically attracted to them. But I think something that's rather curious, he said, it was difficult for me to find someone who was on my level intellectually, right? Someone I could connect with and challenge me intellectually. So I would argue that as a byproduct, she's arguing that what? She couldn't find a Black person, a Black man who was on her level intellectually, so she had to get a white guy, right? I think that's what she's saying. The devil's in the details. When you read in between the lines, that's the argument that she's actually making, right? And so we have to be cognizant of the fact that oftentimes when you're talking to Black Republicans, they're consistently throwing shade at Black people.
Could have married.
Because of a white guy, matter of fact, I remember I was at the jail once and a brother had married a white woman. So I said, why did you marry this white woman? He said, well, I wanted to be with someone who had a good spirit. So I said, well, by default, you're saying that you couldn't find a Black woman that had a good spirit, right? So something to consider, right? So by default, that's the argument that they actually are making, right? So something to consider, because I've even had this conversation with people in person when they say, okay, I married a person outside of my race, but I wanted to find a person who had X, Y, Z. I'm like, well, you couldn't find that in your own community? So that's the default that they're making. America's First Rifleman says, okay, I will respect. Great, no problem. We're back on a good track, brother. Very good. I don't hold grudges.
We have 3 beautiful children who are growing up in an environment that I am just so happy that I was able to, what every parent wants, to give your children better than you had, and that's all I can say. I'm just the luckiest person in the entire world.
How is he gonna feel about you not finding him attractive and just liking him for his mind?
Oh my God. What?
He got the smear already ready for the journalists that are listening. Candace says her husband is not. It was a bonus that I also think that he's beautiful and gorgeous and handsome, but it really was about his mind, his ability to just dive into any subject and comprehend it, just any subject. I mean, whether you're talking about mathematics, economics, politics, he could read a book on chemistry, read a book on building houses, and he just comprehends the concept very quickly. So I know I married the right person, and I want every person to never allow race to be a barrier to you finding love. That is so foolish. That will stop you. And by the way, there has been so much toxicity particularly in Black relationships because of the media portraying Black men as this or.
So I think this is another issue that we have to hone in on, right? This concept of race being a barrier, right? I would disagree, right? Who you love, who you marry is a reflection of your values, right? So if you value multiculturalism, then you will marry someone of another race. If you value or have a level of racial deference for white people and non-Black people, then you will marry outside of your race. But if you value what we like to call cultural continuity, right, biological continuity, then you wouldn't do that. A good example, and I'll talk about this in my forthcoming dissertation family, is we know in higher education you have multicultural centers, you have identity centers such as Black culture centers, Latino centers, you even have some Asian culture centers on higher education campuses, right? Particularly predominantly white institutions or historically white institutions. But Jewish culture centers, you have Jewish culture centers all around the country. but they are adjacent to campus, but not on campus. And the reason why Jewish culture centers were created over 100 years ago, and I know this because I read the literature, was because Jewish students were going to predominantly white institutions, graduating, and marrying non-Jewish people. The Jewish community as a whole said this is a problem, and said we're going to, not only are we going to lose our sense of self, we're going to lose our sense of cultural continuity. So they created Jewish culture centers to reinforce pride in what their Jewish culture, Jewish identity. So they were procreate with Jewish people. And I think it's important to understand that 85% of the world's population practices homogenous marriage and procreation. So it's actually abnormal globally for people to marry and procreate with a member of a different racial or ethnic group.
For Black women as this, and we just have to stop doing that,
Yeah. Have you ever dated Black men before?
Yeah, I dated Black men, which is another thing that I always find really funny because the media tries to portray me as someone who only liked white guys. Actually, if you want to be honest, I started off on a really strong Asian kick in my life.
Oh my gosh!
I thought I was gonna marry an Asian man.
What's fine?
I did. My first boyfriend was Japanese. My second boyfriend was Korean. I just really loved Asian men. It was weird.
That's right.
Yeah.
So once again, as I talked about, this concept of multiculturalism, this lack of having a valuing one's Blackness, is, in my opinion, why one would go and do those type of things, right? And there's, of course, there's a lot of literature, particularly in the realm of Black psychology, that discusses this issue, right? And so oftentimes individuals try to miscegenate their way as a way of escaping anti-Black racism. Well, if I have children with a non-Black person, then if we live in a predominantly white community, a non-Black community, if I work with, I live in proximity with, then maybe I can escape anti-Black racism. So many Black psychologists argue that this is an example of escapism, right? So just something to be cognizant of.
I was in Stanford, Connecticut. There was an Asian population in Stanford.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's Asian population everywhere.
I don't know. Was there a higher one in Stanford, Connecticut?
No, I think I just pursued Asian men. I don't know. I just liked Asian guys.
Yeah.
Candace Owens fetishizes Asian men.
Oh my gosh! Stop painting the headlines so they can grab it. What is wrong with you?
What do you think is the biggest
Tell the truth.
misconception of Candace Owens?
I think the thing that I hate the most is the media always makes it seem like I'm so angry all the time. Which that stereotype is crazy. I have such a good sense of humor and I always have so much fun. Genuinely, I'm having so much fun on my show, on my podcast. I think that the worst stereotype is they have me as somebody that's like angry and hardened because they're always pulling out just one excerpt of something that I've said. And I really, I don't like that because I have just a great sense of humor. I laugh, even when they get me good. Like if they do something and they say something that I'm like, actually, I hate this person, but that's kind of funny. Like I do look like that. I'll laugh. Yeah.
I saw that when Chappelle said what he said.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, I'm like, listen, Dave Chappelle, I didn't even think he was actually that funny in that skit. Of all the Chappelle skits that, exist, I didn't think he was that funny. I think he was really angry throughout that skit. But also it's Dave Chappelle. You know what I mean? It's Dave Chappelle and he knows my name and he knows who I am. And I think that you need comedians. It's a protected space. And even if they're making fun of people, as soon as we start killing the jokers, we're no longer living in a society that we want to be in. Trust me, when the kings start killing the jokers, it's not good. And I love Dave Chappelle. I grew up on Dave Chappelle. I was genuinely honored that he even knew my name. I was just like,
what do you say?
I agree with her there, and I like what she had to say. I agree with that sentiment 100%.
It didn't make you feel no type of way. Called you the most articulate idiot he's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, like I said, I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was insulting, but I wanted to make a larger statement that we need the comedians. You know what I mean? And even though I particularly did not find it funny, I just thought it was important to just kind of rise above it, and yeah, it was offensive. Yes, he definitely intended it for it to be offensive, but at the end of the day, I didn't really think it was an opportunity to be like, what was I going to say? Cancel Dave Chappelle. It's Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Now you accused T.I. of performing earlier, but you got a platform too. So do you find yourself performing at times?
I'm genuine. So there's never going to be a person that comes onto my show or a person that I've talked to that is going to be like Candace then flipped up, when the cameras were on and started saying things that she didn't say to me privately. That's what I mean about a performance. Why did you do that? You and I had spoken on the phone multiple times. I know what you think. I know that you veer conservative. So what was that? Actually, what was that? No, for me, I actually say what I believe. I actually believe the things that I'm saying. And people just find that to be incredulous. How could a Black person not be a Democrat? How could she not honor Lyndon Baines Johnson's dream to have, those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years? Because I learned my history properly after I left school, because now I see that the people that I thought were my saviors are actually avowed racists, and what they really wanted to do was just to recreate the slave plantation. And when I see people like T.I., it gets me angry. It does. People should be angry. People should now be questioning, full stop, especially after the Diddy lawsuit, like what's real and what's not. Who's being blackmailed? Who maybe, is being controlled by certain people. I don't know. These are questions that I think people are ready to start asking, but I definitely have a huge question mark on T.I.
What
You
is this
mentioned Diddy lawsuit. I was about to say that you mentioned Diddy lawsuit twice with T.I.
What's up with the Diddy lawsuit?
What do you mean what's up? You guys have definitely covered it, right?
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It suggests that he was the Jeffrey Epstein of Hollywood, that there's a blackmail ring, that people are being given drugs, they're doing things while they're drugged, and then those people are controlled, right? Because if you're a rapper and your brand is hardcore and I have a video of you kissing a guy and I'm like, I'll release it unless you say or do or take this position, that's a blackmail ring, right? So
T.I. wasn't in there though.
no, he wasn't. I'm just saying that the Diddy lawsuit kind of led me to ask some larger questions about, okay, because I have been feeling like in my heart that something weird's going on with black media. I'm like, what is this trash that we're trying to sell as good music? This isn't black culture. I hate that black people even call it black culture, because that's like, no, vultures came in and took black culture, turned it into something else. Like I've said it many times. I grew up listening to Lauryn Hill. Stop trying to tell me this is black culture. Like I grew up in my grandfather's house listening to The Temptations. Stop trying to sell to me that this is black culture. It's not. This is
black
rotten.
people aren't monolithic. I mean, you're like, even you're an example of that.
No, I'm not saying we're a monolith. I'm just saying that black people create magic when they want to. Okay. There's no singer that is better than a black singer. If you want to go tit for tat, give me the best, white singer versus the best black singer. Like we have unbelievable talent, right? So if you're going to tell me that what we are now making mainstream is the filth that I hear today, I'm going to start asking questions about who's condoning this, who's signing these people.
But music is an algorithm, right? And what they really do is they see what music is being hit on Shazam or what people are quote unquote liking, and that's what they play more.
It's getting artificial.
That's
it's starting
what
to
they
get
quote
artificial.
unquote say.
No, and I think that's why, like, I do love Kanye, because I think he was pointing to this stuff really early. Like when he jumped on stage and grabbed a trophy from Taylor Swift, people were mad. I was mad. I remember being like, what on earth was he doing? But what was he actually telling you? That all of this it's a performance, right? Like this is not based on merit anymore. And by the way, he was factually right. The Taylor Swift video was like a girl dancing in a mirror, and Beyonce put out Single Ladies, one of the greatest music videos of all time, and they gave it to Taylor Swift. There's a narrative, there's a person that they're trying to make big whenever they make these decisions, also clarified by the Diddy lawsuit, because the person alleges, I'll say allegedly, that Diddy told him if he did this or that he would get producer of the year. Well, how could Diddy make that decision? How could Diddy offer that to somebody, full stop? This means that there's a different reason that people are getting awarded and are being platformed. And I have seen people that I just do not believe were made hot by black people that were suddenly being thrown in our face and being invited everywhere on red carpets, and suddenly they're next Taylor Swift. It's all just feels so artificial. It doesn't feel well. I'm giving an example. You guys talked on stage about Ice Spice. I mean, on the show about Ice Spice, you guys played my clip where I was talking about it. I don't have anything against Ice Spice. I'm sure she's a very nice girl. I really am sure. She's young. That's not a justification. What is she, 20? How old is she, 20?
I think she's like 24, 25.
It's actually, she's not that young, right? Like Lauryn Hill she was like 18 when she was on Sister Act. But the point is I don't fault her for making that music, but I am seeing this artificial promotion of Ice Spice. Like all of a sudden, of all the people that to Taylor Swift decide to put on her on the stage and take to the Super Bowl, I have questions. I just have questions, and I do think that Kanye was trying to say something, in that moment. When
I think she has a point there. Brother Steve said a broken clock is right twice a day, and I would agree with her there. I have argued that these concepts, this type of music is artificial, not just for Ice Spice. I think I went all the way back to when Nicki Minaj became hot, right? And we started to see this proliferation of a ratchet feminism and black women rappers. I said, okay, yeah, this is artificial. But once again, she says, well, there are vultures who are doing these things, but she isn't stating who these vultures are because the vultures are white, right? So once again, she's not what she's claiming. Oh, this is blah, 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 but she doesn't want to call these people out because they're white. So once again, you talk about someone who's acting as if they're for the community with the sister girl act, but aren't willing to actually truly speak truth to power and name who the individuals are.
When he took the trophy from her.
But when you listen to Lauryn Hill, there were other music there that wasn't like Lauryn Hill music.
There was Little Kim.
It was the minority.
There was
Trina.
There was
I think
Trina.
Lauren's a little before the Trina. But what I will say, it was a minority of the music, and now it's the majority. And I would be okay with music like that if the majority of Black music was based on what we can actually create in our talent. Because like I said, we have a ton of talent. I tend to think that when we get involved in certain things, we just do it better. I think creatively, Black people are very gifted. And where somebody is making our gift a curse, right? It's encouraging, it's music that's encouraging Black men to commit crimes. It's like a hip hop to prison pipeline. And
she's right there. I would agree. Listen, broken clock is right twice a day. Brother Steve, she is right. It is a hip hop to prison pipeline. I would agree 100%. 100%. I'm talking about objective, right down the middle. Absolutely.
And I just, I really question it.
How do you feel when Meek Mill says he listens to you all the time? Because I've just thought about that when you were talking about.
So family, we're going to stop it right there. And then I'm going to put the link in the chat and let everybody come in and tap in. We're having a great conversation. But just remember, once again, some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks. And diversity of thought is welcome. No racial epithets of any kind. Facts over feelings, so you attack the argument, not the person. And no fundamentally false statements. So the link is in the chat, family. And one thing I want to say, she talked about, well, Black people are incredibly gifted. But she says that when it comes to music, right? We're incredibly gifted when it comes to music. So once again, she's engaging in what? Racial essentialism. She's essentializing race, which is one of the core she's against critical race theory, but one of the core tenets of critical race theory is anti-essentialism. So she's essentializing that what Black people are incredibly gifted when it comes to music. Well, that's white supremacist in nature as well, because the argument that white supremacists made was that we were just naturally good in sports, well, later in sports, but of course in entertainment, but not in serious things. So once again, she's still undermining and disrespecting Black people. She didn't say we're incredibly gifted educators. She didn't say we're incredibly gifted politicians. She didn't say we're incredibly gifted scientists, which we are, right? Navigators, which we are, right? She said we're incredibly gifted when it comes to creating music, right? So I think once again, we find a situation where she's making an argument, right? But at the same time, she's undermining and disrespecting African people. So once again, family, the link is in the chat. Tap in. Candace Owens is okay, and we don't have to agree with everything she says, and it's okay to like or dislike someone. Slayer says she is up there to say all that shit, so you think she has your best interest at heart, and she is talking hip hop because that catches the interest of those they are aiming at. Correct, I would agree. Candace Owens is not okay. She set up Black folks deserve to be shot. Yeah, I think she did say that. The other issue, like I said, when the Black Lives Matter protesters, she stated these were people who were children who simply were faking that they were oppressed because they wanted attention. So something to consider. So once again, family, the link is in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat again. The link is also in the description. If you want to tap in, share your thoughts on the interview. Of course, we were deconstructing a Candace Owens Breakfast Club interview. The link is now in the chat, family. So make sure you tap in, be part of the conversation. The door stream here with Bequaline Network, and of course, Lumumba Speaks, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe that we can gain a competitive advantage by always, keyword, always betting on Black. And when we talk about betting on Black, we're talking about you are Black first. So this isn't a situation of Republican or Democrat. You are Black first. That statement to the statement she made about IQ, you see the game. So Kay Brown, you've been rather active in the comments. The link's in the chat, but I hope you can tap in and be part of the conversation. Once again, you do not have to cam up. You do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. And number two, you do not have to use your actual name. So you can't use a pseudonym to be part of the conversation. Sister Shy, I want you to tap in and be part of the convo, right? You gave some thoughts. How about you tap in? You know, you're a regular guest here. Appreciate you. Tap in and share your thoughts regarding the interview. Brother says, don't forget that there hasn't been a single Black killing that Candace Owens hasn't tried to justify. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jordan Neely, etc. You're right about that, brother. You are right about that. Mr. Sandman, is that you? It seems like there's a different profile photo, so just turn your camera on and cue so I can make sure that's you, and then I'll bring you in. You're right about that, though. She has every extrajudicial killing. Okay, I got you, brother. That's taking place. She has sought to justify that. And of course, I'm not going to give her any grace or excuses for years of treachery because she's made a couple good points, but I can understand that 100%. Go ahead, Mr. Sandman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, sir. Oh, I got you with the boxing joint. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits, the kindred spirits, absolutely.
Yeah, you like boxing too? Yeah.
I used to, man. I used to box. I stopped about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was 36.
I got my son into the Mayweather gym out here in New Jersey.
Okay.
He getting in there. Yeah, he nice with the hands. I got him into some training. You know what I mean? I grew up with the boxing bag in the crib too, so I always been a fan of boxing too. You know, I grew up watching, you know what I mean, Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard,
Yes,
Tommy
sir.
Hearns, Mike Tyson, all them
Yes,
guys,
sir.
you know what I mean, Lennox Lewis, Buster Douglas, you know. Yeah. But Candace, man, she be killing me. I be finding like so many holes into all the stuff that she be talking about. I feel like, man, I don't know. She just seems like, just like you said, she's like a talking head for the Republican Party, and you know what I mean. She got like her little television show, and you know what I mean. She's saying all of the things that her constituents or the constituents of the Republican Party want to hear. You know.
Absolutely. And if I could, brother, that's one of the points I wanted to make is that, you know, there's a difference between an organic black conservative and an inorganic black conservative. I would make the argument that Candace Owens and many of her ilk are inorganic black conservatives. These are individuals who came to black conservative thought based on the fact that they were paid and trained by conservative think tanks, right? And so as a result, they tend to parrot that every argument they make is in the benefit of what the Republican Party. So something to consider when we talk about that. And Brother Abu says Candace Owens' comments about the black family are pretty irrelevant because she's never built a black family herself or even thought to, right? So I agree with you there, brother. Once again, as we know, Dr. John Henry Clark stated, when you go over there, you stay over there, right? You can't come back and, of course, dilly dabble in the affairs of black people, and particularly talking about how building the black family when you have chosen not to build a black family yourself. America's First Rifleman, go right ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on the panel.
No problem.
I apologize. I was just being facetious. I didn't really mean to. I know you're not an actual liar. We just have disagreements.
No problem. You apologize in the chat. You could go right ahead with your comment.
Well, I want to start. So I don't want to just start blabbling my opinion. I want to actually have a conversation on like at least one pointed issue that we can discuss.
Okay.
I don't know, because she said a lot. So is there like, you know, you said a lot about her, because obviously you obviously were unpacking everything she was saying, and everything you unpacked, you virtually just disagreed with like virtually everything she said. So, you know, like I said, we're gonna have to start somewhere on like one of the issues, I guess, where you just don't like conservatives and Republicans.
No, that's not the case at all. When you say I don't like, right, I don't care if the person's Republican or Democrat. What I have an issue with is when a person lies by omission and makes claims that are patently false. So one thing she mentioned that I took umbrage with, and it didn't matter if she could have been a Democrat saying these things that I took umbrage with it, right, is the fact that she claimed that whenever you go government, it's not beneficial. And that's just not true. I gave historical examples: free breakfast, Pell Grants, the GI Bill, and then, of course, last but not least, the not Great Society, but the New Deal, and where the government put people to work building infrastructure in America. Those are examples in which government grew and it actually benefited the citizens.
Mm-hmm. Well,
the devil is always in the details. You have to look at what's being done, how is it being done, and how those funds being allocated, right? Instead of just saying never have these type of things take place.
No, I got you on that point. I'm gonna have to counter a couple of those. And here's why. Like, while I am not one of the proponents that say, government is fundamentally a problem, they can't do anything right. That's not true. So I'm not a libertarian for one. I believe, well, for one, getting taxes congressionally mandated. So I'm all for the collection of taxes.
Yeah, very quickly, the collection of taxes has been taking place since the creation of the modern day nation state in
let's
1450. So yeah.
Well, I don't know. When I get my check, it seems to disappear. somewhat.
I would agree with you. I'd be like, this is a
so I don't know. But anyway, like I'm saying, in a modern sense, whatever. So because you know how there's libertarians and some hardcore right wingers like myself, I would say I'm pretty far right at this point. But they go a little hard in their rhetoric when they're like, you know, government can't do anything right. They shouldn't take money, or taxation is theft, and little stupid verses like that. So, but my thing is the thing about free lunch, free Pell Grants, free all these. Fundamentally, we should not be even offering many of these, or they should have been temporary, and they shouldn't be for multi-decade programs. So that's number one. And the reason why we have hold on, let me finish. I'm about to land a plane real quick. Hold on, let me finish. Now and I'll use one example with education with the Pell Grants. We probably wouldn't need to give many Pell Grants or even have it if we did not inflate the price of education by giving free loans to everybody who wants one.
So I gotta stop you right there, because the reason why the price of it, because you know I'm about to finish my doctorate in higher education student affairs, so this is actually my wheelhouse. The reason why higher education, the cost of higher education rose exponentially was because the government stopped funding public higher education institutions. When the majority of higher ed, particularly we talking about PWIs, HWIs, whatever term you want to use, were what? The primary funders of these institutions were government, state governments, federal government. The cost of education was very low. When the government stopped funding these public institutions, a good example would be Reagan when he was governor in California. Institutions had to then look for dollars elsewhere, and then academic capitalism became an issue, but they had to then start working with different corporations to fund their institutions, right? So the reason why education went up wasn't just because of student loans. It was as a result of the government, state and federal governments no longer primarily funding academic institutions.
Also, could I add something about the free lunch?
And once again, I work in higher education. I've been doing so for the past 10 years. And I've taken classes on this very issue in terms of the rising cost of higher education. And it's not because of student loans, it was because federal and state governments stopped funding public institutions of higher education at the rate that they were before. And Brother Steve says the FHA home loan built the white middle class. Right, that is true. Okay, go right ahead.
Well, there's always been a black middle class in America. So they managed to get loans and build homes themselves. So that's kind of weird. He says that the black middle, because I remember places like Detroit and, you know, Flint and all these other places where black people seem to have neighborhoods and houses and cars and all that stuff. So it's kind of weird he says that. But anyway,
what he said was true. Like, particularly when we talk about.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, I didn't say what, but he's acting like black people were left out of owning homes and having a place to live.
Number one, Brother Steve, you need to come in too so you could clear up. But you're taking something, but all he stated was the FHA home loan built the white middle class, which is something that is historically accurate.
Okay, well, also
too. Anything about black people that
I got you.
Something that happened.
I got you. Also, one thing you said about the New Deal, black people were largely left out of the New Deal. So that's a really horrible example of.
I said as an example of growing government benefiting American citizens. I didn't say specifically black people. Mm-hmm. I know about.
I got you.
Hold on. I know about the black people left out of the New Deal because there's a great book on it called "When Affirmative Action Was White." So I'm aware of that, right? But all I said was this is an example of a benefiting.
Okay, cool. We agree. Okay, we agree. Okay, well, one thing about that program is, and the cool thing is I get to see the old CC camps out here in Oregon. There's still a couple of them out here.
What are old CC camps?
The triple C camps, they were a part of the New Deal programs where they would get young men that were obviously unemployed that really had nothing to do, and they would, you know, have them out in the countryside doing work and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, there were CCC camps. I forget the conservation something core camps, and they got it helped alleviate a lot of the unemployment and got like I said, like a lot of those young men that would be in the cities not doing nothing and tearing stuff up, they got them out in the woods actually doing work.
Yeah, another example would be Job Corps.
Yeah, Job Corps and stuff like that. It was because they had it's the same program. They just had several names, different regions of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But
once again, this is an example of what government doing things that actually.
Yeah, but guess what? But after a few years, it was shrunk down to nothing.
The Job Corps still exists.
Well, that's because it's in a diminished form, and it's a lot smaller. And
really? So what evidence do you have to substantiate that?
Well, it was a lot bigger program back in the day when it first got established.
And when you say bigger program, what do you mean by that?
It was more people involved in it. It was had more things, and now it's just for teenagers and
Job Corps has always been for people aged 16 through 24.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's
it's inception.
Well, it used to be. Well, I mean, okay. I am wrong. I could be wrong on facts, so I will concede points on. Okay, cool. I will concede that because I'm not an expert at Job Corps. But can you stop cutting me off, please, sir?
Go right ahead.
Okay, my overarching point is these programs, while they are examples of the government working, they're not made to be there for multiple decades, so they have to be eventually shrunk. The Job Corps, I think they probably should retweak how they use it to be more successful, but that's another conversation for another time.
Well, how could they do that?
Well, I don't want to get bogged down on our overarching conversation. I don't want to get bogged down on Job Corps.
I want you to substantiate that point.
Lumumba, let's please not get bogged down on something that's not important. Well, actually it's not, because we're trying to get down to the Pan-African part.
It's my show. And I say, if you take issue and say, hey, this program needs to be tweaked, you need to be able to explain, because I'm giving you the platform to say how the program should be tweaked.
I didn't come here to talk about Job Corps at length.
That you made.
I didn't come here to talk about Job Corps. Okay, I'll keep it simple. And if I don't give the sufficient answer, are we going to be able to move on, or are you going to kick me off? Because I'm not going to talk about it much longer.
Of how it could be tweaked.
Okay, listen, from what I've seen, because I know the alumni, I was briefly in it when I was a kid, so I've been adjacent to it, so I have an opinion formed because of it. Okay, it can be wrong. It is what it is. So I'm just going to put it out there. Okay. I just think that I've seen a lot. I just don't think they have a lot of successes, or they don't track the success rate of some of the kids, because I've seen a lot of Job Corps alumni more often than not really achieving after they leave. So I think they probably need to tweak it a couple of ways. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm one of the great unwashed, uneducated Negroes that never spent one day in college. So I'm not as smart or whatever. So
we don't use racial epithets on this platform.
When is Negro a bad word? How is that bad?
It's an epithet, so we don't use
those epithet. Okay. Okay. Black people. Okay, cool. We'll say black or African people. Okay. Sorry about that. We're sophisticated here. We're smart here. So like I was saying, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Steve says the destruction of the administrative state is intentional because it allows for the privatization of public goods. Yes, you're speaking of neoliberalism, where social problems are solved via free market capitalism.
I'm not a neoliberal. See,
we're not talking about you. I'm just reading the
okay, gotcha. But yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I'm just reading the comment. So,
gotcha.
Family, if you're watching, tap in. The link is in the chat. The link is in the description. Definitely want to have a great conversation. Brother K. Brown, definitely want you to tap in. Bag 76 First, want you to tap in. You're a regular person who taps in. Design needs you to tap in. John Jackson wants you to tap in as well. And all the other family wants you to tap in as well. Mr. Sandman, any thoughts?
one thing I did want to talk about is the Candace. She was talking about actually a few things, but you keep talking about how. Well, I wanted to finish my point about government. Listen, the main thing is our government, as of right now, is too inefficient. It spends too much money, and the services we get are not equivalent to what we pay for. And that's my biggest gripe, is that it's not done efficiently. And I think it needs to be done. Like, the balance needs to be budgeted, and they need to balance the budget, things like that. So that's all I'm with, or all I'm talking about. I'm not really trying to bash any particular party, because both parties are at fault in this regard. But there's one party that actually does at least kowtow to the talking point that there needs to be fiscal responsibility. And more often than not, they do try to cut or not fund things, unlike another party. So I'll just say that.
Okay. So I will push back a little bit. I would say, one, when we talk about welfare, the welfare state, this is something that a lot of conservatives bring up. So there's a book I had to read when I was in college, undergrad. It was titled American Society, How It Really Works. 58%, according to the authors, 58% of the world of American welfare or subsidies the government provides are to what? Corporations, not actual citizens, right? So that's an issue there, right? Once again, the book is American Society, How It Really Works. Matter of fact, I would bring it up. So
and guess what? Right now, there are conservatives talking about cutting the Department of Defense and cutting entitlements. Like, overnight, if you gave AFR the reins of power and in the state house or the federal government, and somebody brings up a bill, or I'll co-sponsor the damn thing that's saying we're cutting the military industrial complex by 15, 20, 30, 40 something percent tomorrow, I'm signing it.
Right.
I'm signing it.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Like, so I'm actually conservative, and there's conservatives out there, but obviously the people that are in charge are going to pay for it. But guess what? People like Ron Paul, people like, actually, whether you can call them white supremacists or you don't like them, the Freedom Caucus, not the Congressional Black Caucus, is actually trying to call for the government to be cut. Okay. The Congressional Black Caucus wants the government to be expanded. So
right. I have to look at what expansions that they want. But
they're Democrats. They're Democrats.
I don't think highly the Congressional Black Caucus. Actually, I think, I'm not going to call them names, but I don't think highly of them.
Oh no! I think at this point it's warranted to call them names. They're good for
no, because it's unbecoming. But you said the services we get aren't sufficient for what we pay for. What services are you speaking of?
Well, first and foremost, we're paying too much for the State Department. We're paying for gender programs in Pakistan. We're paying for covert programs to undermine people's elections, a whole bunch of things. So that's what, not saying cut out the State Department. We need the State Department.
I agree. I saw that in Pakistan, those I don't agree with that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like,
but you said the services we're getting, those are services Pakistan is getting. People in Pakistan.
No. But what I'm saying, no. The State Department is a service like the less they get, like, because I think that particular program was like $10 million plus that could be put towards extracting or helping American citizens in dire straits overseas, or they can put that $10 million that can fund the military liaison or attaché office that can rescue an American, that can have American military assets or State Department assets to get somebody out or something like that. That's where that money should be going.
Right. Okay.
So that's when I say services.
We would agree there.
Okay.
We would agree there. Yes. Because, the State Department, their job deals with foreign policy, those type of issues. Right. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why in the HE double hockey sticks are we American taxpayer citizens' dollars paying for gender, what's the term? Gender
programs, like pretty much to talk about feminism and LGBTQ, and to tell them, democracy. Yeah.
Right. So major issue. K Brown, go right ahead.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure you.
My bad. You're a sister. I apologize. You're a sister. Yeah. I thought you was a brother. My bad. Apologetics, sister. Apologetics. Go right
It
ahead.
is fine. It is fine. I have an actual MPA, so I also went to school doing a lot of work
Real quick,
with
I have an
government and all
MPA
that.
as well. I have an MPA as well.
Yes, and so it kind of breaks my heart that our people don't know as much about how the government works as they should, because I feel like it makes it easier for people to mislead them and
Fact.
just basically tell them things that just are not even close to what the truth is. And I wish we would just open up to facts. Like I'm the type of person that if you show me some actual evidence about the things that you are saying and it makes sense and we can recreate this same experiment over and over again and get, close to the same result, then okay, I can accept those facts. But I don't understand shutting your mind down when you hear facts that don't agree with you, facts that you don't that don't fit your worldview.
Okay.
Do I have to go to college to learn these secrets of learning? Because I'm just gonna be honest, most of our educated professionals that are black in America vote Democrat, and you see where that's gotten us. So they can't be that smart.
But they're not voting Democrat because they are rah rah pro Democratic Party. They're voting Democrat because a lot of times, I'm sorry to say this because I'm not for either party, but
Go
a
ahead.
lot of times it seems like Democrats will admit more to some facts than Republicans will. I'm not saying either party is better because,
Could you
like I
provide an
said,
example, sister? Could you provide an example of that, if you could, please?
For example, when it comes to, listen, I'm not saying anybody on here has to be pro-abortion or anything like that. All I'm saying is, as a woman, I have been through miscarriages, and I know how this thing can go. It can go really, really bad for a woman. We can lose our life. We can lose our ability to have other children. So it's not just about, is this a life? I'm pro-life, pro-choice. It's more to it than just that. And so for Republicans to completely shut down and not listen to the facts of the matter and just go with their religious views, I feel like they are ignoring scientific data.
Okay. Well, I will say this. When you talk about religious views, I think that's rather interesting because we know there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. There's supposed to be, right? This is not a theocracy, right? It's supposed to be a democracy, not a theocracy. So I think that's something that's curious. The other issue is that I think if individuals actually brought, now I do remember there was a Republican Senate candidate who was running. He was against abortion, and he stated that if a woman was sexually assaulted, we use the word SA, and she was pregnant, it was a gift from God. He actually stated this. So we see some of these nonsensical concepts. I would also argue that if someone was using a biblical lens to live their life, if you actually read the Bible in totality, you probably would be doing life in prison, because many of the things that the Bible actually supports in terms of pedophilia, in terms of incest, etc., can't be, you should not be engaging in today. So I think even that's an issue in terms of, I may do a show on, should you live your life based on biblical principles? But that's a conversation for another day. Go right ahead.
I just don't understand trying to apply your biblical principles to a woman who is possibly in a situation where she could die if she's left to her own devices. That to me is just unconscionable. I don't understand that. It makes no sense at all to me. We had a woman who bled out in the parking lot of a freaking hospital because they did not want to go in and do the abortion that needed to be done due to the laws that my state has passed. That is insane. That lady could. I mean, I don't understand how people are okay with this.
Maybe I'm spitballing here. Maybe people are desensitized to the issue. Right, that could be an issue. Brother Bag 76 first. You can tap in, brother. What say you?
Good evening. Good evening. The situation on abortion, I think, is more of as far as Republicans wanting to gain more whites in the population.
Yes, I've heard that argument as well.
That's what I personally think.
How many black children have been killed? How many million? How many million?
Well, yes.
How many million?
That's true. There's been a lot, but I'm just saying that
so that doesn't matter.
I didn't
It's
say
not
that.
a black and white issue. That's the problem.
It is a black issue. Those are black African lives that are lost.
What I
that does
mean
matter.
is, it's not just about lives gained, lives lost. Is what I'm trying to get you to understand.
So, what was it? 20 million plus 60 million?
Let her finish, and then you can provide a rebuttal. Go right ahead.
Okay, sorry.
What I'm saying is the issue is way more nuanced than you're giving it credit for.
How so?
Because, like in my situation, the baby was not growing. It wasn't going to grow. You couldn't pray your way into this baby becoming a full-fledged human being. It just wasn't going to happen. So making these laws, I would have had to carry a dead baby inside of me for 5 months. That to me is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Okay, 20 million black children have been deleted since Roe v. Wade. 20 million plus. You mean to tell me there's no way we could have gotten that number down to less than 20 million? So you're saying you're totally cool with 20 million black children done since 1973? Are you seriously saying?
I'm more worried about the kids that we have in foster care, bad situations that are already here, that are starving, that are
They don't
poor.
care about them. Nobody cares about them, not even black people.
Well, that I would disagree.
I care about them.
I would disagree with that.
Well, I was one of those kids. Niggas ain't come to my rescue.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
I apologize. I didn't mean to say that. The N-word. Sorry. I apologize. The white man, the white supremacy has been ingrained in me, and so I have outbursts.
That's not an excuse. That is not an excuse.
It is an excuse.
No, it is not. No, it is not. We do not. I stated this at the top of the show. I said this before I open up the chat. We do not allow racial epithets of any kind on my platform, ever, under any circumstances, for any reason. If you cannot control yourself, you can see yourself out. Period. If it happens again, you're gone. This is a space for black empowerment. The 3 years of black power are what? Self-respect, self-defense, self-determination. You said that you were an educated man. You were autodidactic. You were autodidact. So I don't want to hear that crap. If you can't respect the platform, you can go. If you can't respect black people, you can leave. Period. Brother Ghana, I need you to turn your camera on so I can just make sure you're not trolling. If you can turn your camera on in queue, then I could bring you in. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay, go right ahead, family.
Look, like I said, I apologize. You got me. I'll try to be mindful. I come from other space, but no excuse. Look, my biggest problem, I'm not saying there is no medical uses for abortion, but it has been used as a contraceptive in America. Especially black women have done that. And it's just like, it seems to me that you seem to be making light or brushing that off. I'm not saying you have to holler about it, but it's just 20 million black children. That's a staggering number that should give you pause.
So let me ask this question, Sister Brown. Are you familiar with the American Eugenics Society?
Yes, and I totally understand that perspective, and I agree with a lot of that perspective about how abortion was basically pushed on the black community. I totally get that. But what I'm telling you is, in today's society, black women die the most in this country from giving birth. More than any other group of women, we have the most medical problems during pregnancy. This is something that could basically wipe out a lot of black women if left unchecked, is what I'm telling you. So it's not just about the babies, so to speak. It's also about the women. And that's the part that I feel like a lot of Black men kind of brush aside and don't understand until it's your sister, until it's your mother, until it's your daughter, until it's your niece, until it's your wife.
So would you argue that there should be abortions allowed for medical reasons?
Yes, but see, the problem with that is that when you start letting government decide what medical reasons are instead of doctors, you wind up with idiots who know nothing about medicine making laws, and women end up dying because of it.
Okay. All right. I mean, you got me there. You got me there. So anybody want to provide a rebuttal or agree with what she's saying? Sister Brown is saying.
Well, I had something I wanted to say about the eugenics and like the abortions, because in this country, they were sterilizing blacks, whites, Mexicans, if they deemed you inferior. And this went on across the United States before the 1960s.
So I'm familiar with them sterilizing Black women, right? But I'm not familiar with them sterilizing.
They were doing it up until the 80s. Actually, they had to pay a few women. They're still alive that they sterilized involuntarily, and I think North Carolina is one of those places.
Yep. Yeah. North Carolina, there was a hotbed of that. Yes, forced sterilization. Yes, hotbed.
And that was because they deemed you inferior. If a woman was pregnant, they said that, oh, she's a whore or a harlot, and she would pass this trait down, so they would sterilize her. Yep. So this is something that's been practiced in this country under both parties. Yep. So no one can claim that they're sacred in supporting life, because there was a time when they didn't. And that's what I wanted to say.
The Tuskegee experiment is another example. Right. I mean, this took place for 40 years. So it was irrespective of what political party was running the Oval Office. This is something that took place. Right.
You're referring to injecting syphilis in the men and not giving them the antidote, correct?
Right. And then watching to see the effects of them having syphilis and it being untreated.
Okay.
Real quick, and if I say I say that, because I have to mention this part, because if I didn't, I would be lying by omission. Tuskegee University, the brainchild of Booker T. Washington. Right, in Blood of Black narrative, I see you, but I'm gonna bring you on momentarily. The brainchild is Booker T. Washington, right? The great Booker Telefario Washington, who I have tremendous respect for. Actually, what they knew about the Tuskegee experiment and signed off on the government engaging in that experiment on campus. So, Brother Ghana, you've been waiting patiently. Go right ahead.
I'm gonna fall back and let you continue. I'm doing good, man. It's nice to talk to you. But I'm not going to start yet. I'm gonna fall back and let the show go for a minute. All right.
Okay. Brother Steve Muhammad, Black Narrative. Go right ahead.
All right. Yes. Greetings. I wanted to just say that I understand where the sister is coming from. And and when you think well, let me just say, like in Islam, abortion is forbidden except under 3 conditions: rape, incest, and if the life of the mother is in danger. So I can understand what the sister is saying, because really what they're trying to do is preserve the white race, because they're having what's called a birth dearth.
Yes.
More are dying than are being born. This is not just in America. This is in all of Western society. And
correct, right.
And so this is what they're trying to do. So they come up with these extreme laws. They're extreme laws, and this is to preserve, their racial group. And this is really what these abortion laws are all about.
Those fertility rates.
Okay, so what's wrong with Black children living again? I don't really understand. That may be. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to preserve their birth rates. There's nothing wrong with that, whether you like white people or not. And also that would benefit Black people by having more Black children. So I understand.
I understand where you're coming from too. Absolutely. I definitely understand where you're coming from, because the abortion, you know, if you all have ever seen that movie or that documentary, My Alpha, I think it's My Alpha 21.
My Alpha 21, absolutely, yes.
And if those who are watching this can, you know, go and watch that documentary, you know, abortion was used for a long time, of course, to really as a method of genocide against Black people.
Right.
Because they set up so they put the abortion factories in our community, and they put the fertility factories in their community, right? And we all know what that was about. And so when you look at the abortion rate of Black people, then what you have to do is you have to put it in context, though. You have to look at also the environment in which those abortions were taking place. And I'm not justifying them, right? I'm just saying that we were set up. They made it look as though, well, you know, if you can't afford this child, the best thing for you to do is get an abortion. If you want to have a nice career, the best thing for you to do is get an abortion. All these type of messages were being pumped at Black women. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, we had these, you know, these issues. But I think that what we have to look at now, and many people are not really recognizing, is that the chemicals that our women are putting on in their hair, the tampons and the pads are laced with chemicals. These chemicals are causing our women to die in pregnancy. So now we have a maternal mortality rate that's off the chain, is worse than in some third world countries, and an infant mortality rate where our babies are dying before the first year of birth. This is genocide that's taking place. But it's so, as it says in the Bible, come let us deal with them wisely. We're dealing with a wickedly wise people who are using chemical and biological warfare.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. 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 Anybody, go ahead, Brother Ghana.
I got nothing to say after that. I mean,
drop the mic, Brother Steve.
I'm like, who is this? Who is this dude?
Hey, so very, very quick, you know, Brother Steve, you know, we go way back. Brother Steve is he's just like me, Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. And, you know, one of the reasons Brother Steve is cooking with fish grease is because we share the same birthday.
There you go.
Right. So, you know, I mean, it's just what we do out here, right? But yeah.
Point with
Sister Shai says even the food as well, but the design says population control. And so I think these are some of the issues we need to be cognizant of, because as we know, Black women have the highest level, Black people in America have the highest infant mortality rate, right? Black women die in childbirth more than anyone else. And some of it is due to what the racist concept that we have a higher pain threshold than others, right? So we're animalistic, right? A good example, contemporary example was Serena Williams. When she was pregnant and she was going through labor, she kept complaining that she was dealing with some severe pain. They were ignoring her, and she had to basically have a demonstrative, outburst to get them to realize something was wrong. And if she did not do that, if she did not have the agency to speak out, she would have lost her life.
And you know, to just go on what you're saying, think about that though. See, we have our sister Serena Williams, who's a millionaire, right? So it crosses all you know, social economic strata, right? Absolutely. So how can that happen unless it's coming through the chemicals, you know, and also the food that the individual is chemical and biological warfare. So I think what we have to understand is we are literally behind enemy lines, and we have to see it that way. If we're not conscious that we are, you know, that the white man or whatever you want to call him, the European, the Caucasian, has not changed. At least those who are up at the top, who control institutions, right, and control corporations, his mindset has not changed. Maybe Billy Joe on the street, Bob or Russell, they might, you know, but those who control institutions and corporations, their thought. And look, I can't go. I'll stop right there.
Well, thank you. Can I say something? Can I say something? Everything you're saying sounds very good, and there are medical inequalities. That's an undeniable. Some of it's alarmist, some of it's pandering, crying about white folks to white folks. Because ever since George Floyd, you got white women and everybody like black women are dying, instead of because I'm all about solutions. We all about solutions, right? Until we give a damn about funding our own. To me, all the complaints about black health and black maternity health or prenatal care, that's all fixable. We're some of the richest black people on this planet, some of the most prosperous people in positions of power. The vice president, a black woman. We had the last president was a black man, or not last one, but the one before last was a black man. So we have the resources and the smarts and we have Meharry Medical College. We have whole institutions that are straight up solutions. So that's why I get what y'all saying, but at the same time, to me, it's just Negroes crying. Oh, sorry. Bye. I'm gonna leave. But yeah, we just cry a lot, and we expect others to change.
So let me say this: one, having one or two black people in public housing in Washington, D.C. does not change the conditions of the masses of our people. Number two, whenever nobody said white people or Americans were crying when they were complaining about 9/11. The only time the black people are the only people who are blamed for our own Holocaust, blamed for our own circumstances. Whenever
nobody's blaming ourselves for slavery. Come on.
Well, actually, yes. Actually, I know. I'm in higher ed. I know this. Black people always blame black people for the Holocaust of enslavement. We're blamed for everything. We never. In fact, we are only people who are blamed for our own Holocaust, right? But once again, these are some of the black conservative talking points to always bash black people, to always make it seem like we're complaining about actual, real issues that take effect and exist in our community, right? But what we find is black people who are black-minded, we don't engage in the soft bigotry or low expectations, or this concept of racial deference to whites, to where we're never going to speak ill of people who are doing us harm. And that's typically what we find in black conservative thought, right? And so, and I know this because I've done this, I've had my platform for years. I've done shows with people who are black Republicans. They tend to engage in a level of racial bigotry and racial epithets that not even white supremacists do. So as you can see, he couldn't control himself, right? The brother Brandon, Pan-African, well, he's not a brother, Pan-African Strikes Back. The level, the use of racial epithets is just ad nauseum. Like, they can't control themselves. So the very people who say they're trying to help the black community, that they want to do better they want to benefit the black community, they want to see the black community grow, is using this type of language that is that's not conducive to what creating an environment that is what conducive to learning and growing. For example, there have been studies, and Brother Steve Muhammad, you can speak to this better than I can, that the type of language you use, the type of music you listen to when a child is in the womb can affect their disposition, right? They've even done studies to show that the type of music you listen to, the type of environment you create, even when you're growing food or plants, can affect how they grow. Am I right, Brother Steve?
Absolutely, you're right.
So when you say you want to benefit the black community and you engage in these type of racial epithets that are harmful to black people, it's hard for me to take you serious. Now, very quickly, I'm gonna shut up because I know I'm on a monologue. I was at the gym today. I'm still recovering, but just doing a little light PT. There were some brothers from the continent in there. We're having a conversation. They're using the N-word. I said, let me stop you right there. So this is something I do in person, but Steve can speak to this. And I said, why are you using it? What does the word mean? They couldn't tell me. Right? So I had to break down the meaning of the word and then say, so why are you using it to talk about people that look like you? Because it was in vogue. They thought it was cool. Right? So this issue of me pushing back against the use of racial epithets regarding black people is not something that I'm doing on YouTube. This is who I am in my everyday life. Right. With that being said, go, eShore, ENT, I hope you could tap in. Go right ahead. Whoever wants to go.
Yeah. I just wanted to back you up on what you were saying about, language. One of the things that we hear when we watch the Malcolm X videos is he always says that we were robbed of our name, our language, our religion, and our culture. Now, all of these are a science, right? It's not just something that you just throw out there. So what is language, right? Language is how you communicate, right? And like you said, it's a science. So when you name a thing, when you give something a name, you're describing the nature, right? And the function of that thing, right? So if they call us a Negro coming from the root of that coming from necro, coming from the word dead. What I'm saying to you is that you're a dead human being, right? And that your actions are dictated by what I do, right? So you don't move unless I move you. So here in 2004, we are still dependent on the white man feeding, clothing, and sheltering us. In 2004, as the brother was saying, with us making over probably being somewhere between the 9th and 11th richest nation if we were separated, making us even richer than some European nations with their GDP, right? We're still dependent. We're still, as a people, we still have to go to him for our food, our clothing, and our shelter. Now, what does that mean? That means that we have been psychologically destroyed, right? We have been psychologically destroyed, and we suffer from what's called learned helplessness, right? Some of us don't feel that we can operate unless the white man is there to help us out. This is, and what the brother was saying is that before he left, and he was saying that, we have these billionaires and all this and all that, but you know what else we have? We're still under the influence of the Willie Lynch syndrome, right? We got envy, distrust, and what's the other one? Envy, distrust, and I can't think of it right now, but we can study that, and that is something that we got to look at this psychological warfare that we've been under in America that makes us think that we need that the white man's ice is colder, which is not at all. We need to think like Mao said. We need to reject what he supports, and we need to support what he rejects 100%. If we so just be on the right path.
Very quickly, American First Rifleman, because you said they're gonna just talk about how the white man was racist and not hold each other accountable. We don't do that over here on Lumumba Speaks. I know, but Steve knows I can say this because we know each other personally. We understand that the enemy of black people is external as well as internal. Right? We understand anti-black racism is ubiquitous. We understand systemic racism. We understand institutional racism. But we also understand, when we talk about internally, the issues that what prevent us from being able to handle our business, right? Is due to the racially disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive ways that we live our daily lives. Would you agree, Brother Steve?
Yeah, because I see this comment by the brother. He says they're not going to just talk about how the white man was racist and not hold each other accountable. See, that's I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, he is not looking at the three planes, right? The mental, physical, and spiritual. He's not looking at the mental. Thought precedes action, right? So what you think at first, then you do it. But the problem is, what are we thinking? Who programmed us to think this way? Right. So when we listen to the radio, as you were just talking about language.
Yes, sir.
So in the small city, we have a loop of these top 40. Who decides the top 40? Mm-hmm. And why are the top 40 rap music so negative, right? It's because they're programming. This is all what's called programming. If we had conscious rap music, remember when the conscious music, Tribe Called Quest, Public Enemy, and all that. The white man, he went to attack them, and then he replaced the conscious rap with what? Niggas with an attitude. And I'm not saying,
I know what you're talking about. You're just giving the name of the. I think Digital Planets was a group in the mid-90s I was a big fan of, and I remember they talked about that the record label was pushing now to make what more aggressive music,
right?
Music that was promoting what Candace Owens called the hip hop to what prison pipeline,
yeah.
right? So I agree with her there, right? But also when you talk about this programming, Candace Owens mentioned this, that the educational system plays a role. And as a result, we know Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote his now seminal book 91 years ago, Miseducation of the Negro. So one of the things that we do in terms of being practicing Kucha Shakalia, self-determination, that second principle of Kwanzaa, having agency, right? Even in the matrix of domination, that's a concept, that comes out of Black feminist thought, is building institutions. Brother Steve could talk about the work we've done in terms of working with Black youth on the weekends. Another brother, the brother, he's married to my ex-wife, in terms of the West Dayton Youth Task Force, where we had African-centered Saturday schools right on the west side of Dayton. And they played chess, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, right? They got a good meal, great, right? So, and they weren't charged anything, right? But I see what he talks about, Jewish gangster rap music, but it's up to the Black parent to turn it off and protect the Black children. So I would agree with that.
To a degree, though.
It's twofold, absolutely.
Because at the same time,
but real quick, brother Steve, I want to make sure I touch on this, because the one brother said there's nothing wrong with getting help from whites. Only logical. I hope you could tap in and really, double down on what do you mean by that. Because I would argue that it stunts agency and self-determination. We know there are numerous Pan-Africans that have made this argument, from Malcolm X to Assata Shakur to Nelson Mandela, even Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. Even Marcus Garvey argues that when you are seeking help from whites, you are admitting that you can't do it yourself, right? And so that reinforces that stereotype that we aren't able to be self-determining people. So I would disagree with that. But I hope you could tap in and, of course, share your thoughts. Okay, go right ahead, Brother Steve.
Yeah, I would have to disagree with that as well. I mean, of course, living in this society, you may have to, use some of their, utilize their help, because this is a society that is controlled and dominated by the white man. So in that case, yeah, sure. But I mean, we don't need their help if we were a separated people. You know what I mean? If we were separate and doing for self. We have to remember that when slavery ended, Black towns cropped up all over America. We were doing for ourselves, and it was because of our ability to gain control of our community and begin to prosper, that the white man became envious. Correct. And he destroyed those Black towns. We don't need his help.
Right.
I mean, we need his help now that we're still in bondage to him, and that he controls all of the assets. Pay us what you owe us. Give us some states of our own, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan called for, and you can go kick rocks. We don't care.
So very quickly, only logical states financially. So I think he's arguing that whites can help us financially. I disagree. Thomas Sankara, the 5th president of Burkina Faso, a Pan-Africanist, stated whoever feeds you imposes their will upon you. So we all, those of us who have children, your children do what you say, because you're the one who put food on the table, right? So I would disagree with that. I would disagree with that. Particularly, especially financially, right? Because whoever's pulling the strings, you better believe that you're going to be tap dancing to their tune. So no. And Sister Shai says, no, but I'm tired of our community not doing anything. We keep having discussions with some of the Black neighborhoods are still in bad conditions. So I would say this, Sister, there are some brothers on this channel, particularly myself and Brother Steve, that I know are doing the work in the community, right? But we also have to understand that these are things that aren't going to be highlighted by the enemy's media platforms. Right, so something to be cognizant of, something that we need to be aware of. I do a lot of work not only with but there's a chess program here in Columbus, for Black youth, and then there's another St. Stephen's here in Columbus. They have a program with Black youth to where Black men ages 16 to 24, you join the program, you go through rite of passage, you go through job training, professional development, etc. And of course, do you receive a stipend throughout the time that you're in the program? So there are brothers doing work, right? Not just having conversations. We're not going to finish the Black communities because Black women are in charge of them. And this brother just told us they are undermined control. So we will never fix our own neighborhoods. Any thoughts on that? Ashon Lewis, what's the word?
Can you should invite Rifleman back on, because he's making a lot of comments, but it's scary to do it from out there. He should make those comments here so we can, have a dialogue.
Okay, so America First Rifleman AFR.
Hey, what's going on,
everybody? They want you back in, so come back. Go ahead, Brother Lewis.
He's making a lot of comments, but it's scary to do it from out there. He should make those
Brother Lewis, I'm gonna
so
need you to turn the YouTube off in the background. I need you to turn YouTube off in the background because we're getting an echo. So go ahead.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody?
Doing quite all right. How about yourself?
Not much. Yeah, I don't really understand what's going on. What's up with America First Rifleman trying to continue to keep saying that we're always blaming the white man on certain things that we didn't ask, nor we didn't want to happen to us all those years due to the conditions that we're still in, And most of the time, this is coming from him because he's always a guest on, Brandon's on channel, Pan African Strikes Back. And just like with him, he always loves using the word excuses. Okay. Not every Black person making an excuse about us not trying to do something. Some of us are trying to do something. But we're always got somebody always trying to we're always are trying to do something to better our community and everything. And most of the time, he always likes saying that we're blaming white folks. Well, who are we going to blame?
Right.
Well, so I think this is important as well, that we understand that when we study Black history, not just here in America, but in the Caribbean, even on the African continent, wherever African people are, whenever there's been real or perceived Black progress, it's been followed by periods of racial retrenchment. So I'm gonna give 3 examples. First, but Steve alluded to this a little earlier. So I'm gonna start here, then I'm gonna take off, Brother Steve. Reconstruction was followed by what the nadir of race relations, right? The Civil Rights Black Power movement was followed by law and order. Obama's historical election as the first Black president of America in the United States of America was followed by what? A rise in not only extrajudicial violence against African Americans, but also white vigilantism, and the proliferation of white nationalist hate groups. So once again, what we find is whenever there is real, even perceived Black progress, not only just in America, but globally, we could talk about what? We talk about African independence movements. These African nations gain independence. They begin to actually grow their economies. The United States, the U.S. State Department, CIA funded coups to remove these individuals from office, and then have these puppet leaders in place to then have them take out loans with the IMF and World Bank to hold the community, hold those nations into poverty. Same thing even took place in Haiti, right? So we need to understand that whenever there is real or even perceived Black progress, it's followed by periods of racial retrenchment. And once again, this isn't hyperbole. This isn't my opinion. I've substantiated the claim I've made with factual information.
Yeah, it is factual. We can see it. It's always a white backlash, and a lot of this comes out of what the late great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was talking about the fear of genetic annihilation. And when we talked about the abortion and that being overturned, this is what we're talking about. What Dr. Francis Cress Welsing is talking about. When we talk about immigration, this is what we're talking about. And as far as blaming white people or being dependent on white people, let's just look at, for instance, our Native American brothers and sisters. They're not in the condition that they're in because of any defect within them. They're in the condition that they're in their own reservations, and they're suffering today today in America, where their people have been here for over 16,000 years. They're suffering today because of the architecture of white supremacy. We're suffering. We're in what you would call in movie terms the matrix. But this matrix is called the architecture of white supremacy. This architecture of white supremacy, once again, controls all of the institutions. So when we talk about education, architecture of white supremacy. When we talk about healthcare, architecture of white supremacy. When we talk about justice, architecture of white supremacy. Whatever you're talking about, architecture of white supremacy. So the fear of whites is when they hear an independent Black thought. They don't like independent Black thought. That's why they don't like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's why you don't hear about the Honorable Marcus Garvey in the school system or any other independent Black thinkers. That's why they demonize the Black Panther Party, because the white man is a natural enemy to the Black man. Now, this is not a racist term. It's just like you saying that a lion is a natural enemy to the cheetah. They're both cats, but they're just natural enemies. That's just the reality of the situation. It don't have to be hate. It's just the cheetah recognizes that the lion is an enemy and they stay away from the lion. That's what we should do. We should vote for an independent land where we can breathe. Go right ahead.
There you go. I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, brother Lou. I think Brother Lou or Brother Ghana wanted to speak.
I'll let somebody else speak.
I'll speak. Look, I am all for going over the historical injustices that the white man has enacted upon Black people since we've been taken to North America. We can go down the list. We can trauma bond all day, all night. We trauma bonded last year, the year before, the year before that, the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. The year before that, we were talking about the white man did this. Did you know the white man did Rosewood? Did you know the white man did us Gator Bait? Did you know the white man did it? This is all we talk about. And we are still in bad situations. And then when people start talking, then you start talking about, oh, they mind control. See the Jewish rap music, it's everywhere. So we're under mind control not to do right and blah, 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 blah. But we have examples of Black people that actually do right. But we don't, as a community or as a collective, want to replicate that. The white man and racism is not stopping the average Black person from achieving anything. We just don't choose to. There's no white mind control over us. We just don't want to do right because we live in a very prosperous country and we don't get penalized for it like we would in other less prosperous countries where Black people can't afford to act out and do the crap or not do some of the stuff we do as a collective. Okay, I just said, and I'll land the plane real quick and I'm going somewhere. The reason why I say we're not serious is because I just named you a medical institution that Black people run where we can literally come up with solutions to Black mortality rates or infant mortality rates and all that stuff. We have the doctors, and half of the doctors that are going in are Black women. So that should be a good thing, right? So half of the doctors being made, it used to be like 60, 70% Black men. Now it's like 50-50. Now it's 50% Black women, 50% Black men graduating from medical school. So we have the people in the institutions. Okay. But hold on, last thing, I'm gonna land a plane. But like I said, we have these people that we have in positions, and somebody like Black Narrative or whoever will keep bringing up the white man, somebody's paid off, they, mind control. There's always a convenient answer for us not doing right. And at the end of the day, it's just maybe, just maybe we don't give a damn and we don't care. And the last thing I'll say is, if the white man was so horrible and so racist and so scary and hanging us and lynching us, we refuse to go back to Africa and just stay there. Instead of complaining about how racist the white man is, we literally have a whole continent where there's black people we could go. But we rather sit here on the white man's internet and complain about him. And I pass the mic.
So let me push back, Brother Ghana, and I'm gonna give it to you.
All right.
And I do apologize, but number one, a black person is the one who created the internet. So I'm not gonna give white people credit for that. Number two, you say that we don't want to do right, but you were the one who said it was white supremacy is the reason why you keep using the N-word. You said that on this platform, and I can.
Well, I was joking. I was really joking. You were kind of trying to use your kind of talking points. You guys kind of against you.
You've never heard me on my platform use the term white supremacy.
Oh, that's true. You don't,
so that's not my talking point. So don't.
But you just don't say the word. But you just talk around it.
No, and let me cut my camera on. No, I've never used the term white supremacy because I know anti-blackness is more than just white people. Anti-blackness is ubiquitous. And in fact, white people didn't even come up with the concept of anti-black racism. It was Arabs and Jewish people. We even find anti-blackness in classical civilizations in antiquity in Hinduism with Indians. So I've never used the term white supremacy. So once again, you're coming for me and I didn't send for you, and you're making claims that are just patently false, because these aren't things that I say on my platform. Ad nauseum, I talk about anti-blackness being ubiquitous. And at the beginning,
I stand correct.
Don't cut me off, okay? And then on my channel, I've always said that the progenitors of anti-blackness were non-black people of color, not whites. Okay, so we just gonna make that clear. Brother Ghana, go ahead. Brother Ghana, you got it. Brother Ghana. But
he's in his warehouse job.
So once again, one thing that we don't do here at Lemon Speakers is we do not make ad hominem attacks. We do not attack.
That's a joke. I'm a working guy too, Lemon. But come on, we can't joke now.
Once again, on my platform, we do not attack the person. We attack the argument.
I'm not attacking a brother. I was joking.
Once again, we don't do that here on my platform. We don't do that.
That brother swole. I ain't trying to get at him. You see how big that nigga is?
Once again, we don't do that on my platform. I stated this at the beginning of my show. I stated this once before I opened up the conversation for dialogue. We do not make ad hominems. We attack the argument, not the person. We don't joke in that manner, right? In any way, shape, or form. This is not the
so no jokes.
Once again, we're here to have a serious conversation. A constructive conversation. We don't do that here.
Rifleman a question. I hear him slip every now and then with the N-word, right? And once
I'm only what my community made me.
He's not fully
exactly, Rifleman. You are what your community made you. And who made your community?
Black people.
Who?
Black people.
Black people, we control the institutions in our community?
Yeah.
We control the educational material that's in our schools?
Look, we control the streets and what's in front of us in our actions.
What street do we control, brother Rifleman?
The ones that the black people live on, but we refuse to clean them up.
So in the streets that you live on, what do the policemen look like that go down your street?
Oh, well, I live around white people. Well, I'm talking about really growing up. It was a dysfunctional black community where nobody took responsibility.
How did it become dysfunctional?
Because black people didn't care.
Why didn't they care? Why didn't they care?
Because look, I'm not going to blame white people. Okay, I was born in the 80s. I was born in a black people, Black Americans, like my mother and some people in my family. and the people in my neighborhood that I had to grow up around. It was their fault. That's why my community looked the way it did. It was no white man oppressing. It was no policemen stopping them from snitching on the crack dealer or snitching on the local man that's sexually exploiting the young girls with drugs. That was those people there. You can't blame the black man, the white man that made that community unlivable for young black children such
Let
as
me
myself.
ask you, where did crack come from?
Okay, if a white man, a Hispanic man, or Asian man comes to me and says, I got this money, guns, and drugs, and I need you to sell this shit, I'm gonna be like, fuck off. Oh, excuse me, sorry. I'm gonna tell them to kick rocks. Whether and that's under pain of death. You know why? Because I have a code, I have morals, and I'm not afraid to say no, even if it may cost my life. You know why? Because drugs tore my family up. So I'm willing to say no. But a lot of black people will say, okay, I'll gladly destroy my neighborhood for a few $1,000.
Do they do
think
drugs
any
in the
black
community you
person
live
can
in
do that?
now?
Like you
Do
do?
they do meth? Do they do opioids in the drug in the community you live in now?
All I know is
Do they
they
do
patrol
drugs?
around and they clean up trash on the
No, I
floor. Then
asked
nobody.
you. I asked you. Are they heavy drug addicts? Do they do drugs in
No,
the area
they get
amongst
taken
your
away.
people, amongst
They
the
get
white
taken
people?
away.
Listen. We
They
know the
get taken
statistics.
away.
You can't sit here and lie. We know the statistics. We know what them opioid statistics are like. We
Right.
know what
Okay,
the meth
and those
statistics are
people
like.
get
So I'm
taken
gonna ask you
away,
again.
and
I'm
the
gonna ask you
county
again.
sheriff.
Give you a
The
chance
county
to
sheriff
respond.
takes them away in his car.
Listen, is there heavy drug use in your area, your community? And why
No,
is that?
there is not. And if
There's not
there's
in your
any
white
drug
community.
use, they
What's
get
your name?
taken away.
What's your community you in? What city you in?
I live outside. I live in the Portland area.
Come on, man. You're not even going to be honest right now.
Yeah, I am honest. I live in the Portland area. Everybody knows. Lumumba knows me.
Okay, Portland area. So you say there's not heavy drug use amongst white people in the Portland area. There's not heavy.
Oh yeah, of course.
There is in that community. So what's going on with them? You just talked about the dysfunction in the black community for dealing with drugs.
Well,
Now
they
in your
just
community, you
okay,
just said they do it.
Can I answer your question? They had a law called Measure 110 that was just overturned overwhelmingly by liberal white people that love to let people do what they want in the streets. Overturned open drug. Hold on. Yes, I am answering your question. You know why? Because they're not allowing people to do open air drug use.
Now, how many
so
of
they're
them,
actually
how many of them drug dealers in your community have you snitched on? Since they're not snitching on them.
Okay, listen. Okay, sir. If the Billy Bob next door was cooking up, sir, if there was Billy Bob Thornton cooking up meth next door to my nice, beautiful house with my nice, beautiful property, you best believe I am calling the cops on his ass to get him up out of there.
So that means none. You never
because you know why? Because I live in a neighborhood where people are responsible and they go to work.
Like the black people you pointing the finger at. You live in the same drug-filled neighborhood. You're not calling the police on them. Everything you just talked about, that's you, right? Is that not
no,
you?
Yes. If I saw people, listen, I don't live in dysfunctional neighborhoods because I'm a rational person. I'm a logical person. So as soon as I could fend for myself, I moved to a place where I didn't have to worry about people doing drug use next door to me.
They are doing drug use next door to you. They are. Statistically, it shows. Stop it.
Okay, 13% of black population, 13% of white population around that number uses drugs. Okay, black people don't use drugs more than white people.
So what are you talking about? Why'd you bring it up? Why'd you use it as an indictment against black people?
I didn't use this as an indictment against black people. I just
talked about the community.
Wow, you're just upset right now. I'm sorry.
Your memory about the community you lived in, you said all the things that exist in the community you live in right now. The same damn drug addicts, the same damn
No. The crackheads walking down the street where I'm right. Like I told you, if there's dysfunctional stuff in this neighborhood here, it's getting dealt with because we have law enforcement that does their job. They don't allow drug use and open air drug use in my county.
So let me say this real quick. I remember Malcolm X stated that the black community was over police, and he said that we have more police in the black community than the white community, but more crime. And Malcolm said that the only way this can happen is if the police are in cahoots with the criminals. Malcolm made this argument, right? The second issue is AFR stated that he doesn't live in a dysfunctional community because he has sense. But you're overlooking the fact that some people live in economically depressed communities and crime-ridden communities, not because they don't have sense, but because they can't afford to live in what? Better off communities. So there's
better get your skill set up. Better get your skill set up.
Well, there is a thing in America called the working poor. That is a reality. You have the working poor in America. So once again,
I did that too, and I worked my way out of it.
First off, once again, just because someone's living in a community that's socioeconomically depressed or crime-ridden is not because they don't have sense. There are other variables at play. That's the reality.
Laziness and laziness and
no. We're not going to play that game.
That's the other variables.
No, it's not. If you're going to be disingenuous, you can exit stage left. I would.
So some people.
Okay, let's see what we're going to do here.
Can I say something?
Go right ahead, Brother Ghana. It's because, like I said, I don't play those games. I stated once again, I don't allow people to be intellectually dishonest on my channel. Right? There are a number of variables at play. There are people who have college degrees who are unable to have high-paying jobs. This is just a reality, right? But what we did see also, Brother Ghana, was when it came to black people, it's all our fault. When it came to white people, oh no, so on and so forth. Even though he said that the data, the statistics show that what? The majority of people who use drugs are white. I remember when I was in high school, there was a young lady, white girl, who was in my homeroom. And I'm gonna shut up and then give it to Brother Black Narrative and Brother Ghana. And she was going to a private school, got kicked out of private school, and so she was going to my high school, Deconstructing White High School for the Arts, the best high school in the city, Dayton at the time. And what happened is she said she had a boyfriend, and then she stated that she ended up breaking up with the guy. So I'm just making conversation in high school. I said, why did you break up with him? She said, well, he was a straight arrow. I said, what the French toast does that mean? She said, well, he didn't want to do drugs. This is a white girl saying she broke up with a guy because he wouldn't do drugs. Right. So once again, we got to stop the games. Right. But go ahead, Brother Ghana and Brother Black Narrative.
Go on, Brother Black. Pause.
Oh, okay. All right. One of the things, being in the nation and we go into our community, right? And, the thought that our brother has about our people, all of us are victims. When you're talking about the drug dealer, victim. When you talk about the person that buys drugs from the drug dealer, victim. We're all victims. You know what I mean? And the best thing for us to do is to wrap our arms around each other. I mean, I understand that some of us have, behavior that is very unpleasant, but we have to look beyond the exterior, because really that brother or that sister, they're that way. They were shaped that way by the society that they were raised in. And so I think that's one of the things that we have to begin to do, is to not criminalize our own people, even though we may be criminals. You know what I mean? But the true criminal, as who was it that said that? I think it was the late Dr. Khalid, right? He said, how are you going to outsteal the white man who stole you? He stole us.
So I will say this, brother Steve. So one piece I would disagree with is I do think we need to criminalize people in our community who are criminals.
Absolutely.
Because they're doing harm to the people in our community.
Right.
And, Du Bois talked about this years ago in his seminal text, Souls of Black Folk, we know was written and published in 1903, where he made the argument that we tend to sometimes romanticize the criminals in our community because we know the criminal justice system is inherently racist, at every level, local, state, and federal. We even saw this with the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, where the most revolutionary, grassroots, community-based organizations that we've ever had in our community. But one of the issues that they had was this concept of the revolutionary criminal who would become a member of the Black proletariat and become a member of the revolutionary class, right? And they found out that, hey, that didn't work, right? It didn't work. The individuals were taking that type of behavior and then bringing it into the organization. So I think we do know, because when we talk about our culture and going back to our culture, when we talk about traditional African culture, by traditional African culture, I mean African culture independent of European and Arab influence. When individuals engaged in criminal activity, they were excommunicated from the community.
Right.
Right. And so I think that that's something that in many
no, I think you might misunderstand me, because I totally agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. That just makes sense, right? You can't have a bad apple in the bunch, because it will ruin the whole bunch, right? What I'm saying is, okay, let's take Malcolm for an example.
Okay.
If we're able to take the criminal out of that criminal environment, right, and put them into a more productive and loving and nurturing environment, I believe that the nature of the Black man is to be right. But when you talk about the society that we live in, we're miseducated, right? We're taught self-hatred, right? And then on compounded, we're put in an environment where we're striving to survive, right?
Right.
The first law of nature is survival. If I have to shoot, if I have to kill, if I have to steal, I'm gonna survive. And that's why I think that we have to look at our people in a different light, because we're not the criminal.
Right.
We're living in as Dr. Amos Wilson said, we're living in a crimogenic society. It's a society that makes everyone a criminal. We're all criminals, because this society takes our tax dollars, gives them to Israel, right, to bomb the Palestinians, to genocide Joe and the rest of them, are using our tax dollars, right? And so, yeah, I mean, so that's, I just see it once again as, I love Black people. I can't help it. I love Black people.
Right.
And I know I see our criminal behavior. We crazy. We're crazy. We're out of our mind, but it's not our mind, right?
Right.
We're out of our mind, and we've adopted, like, I know I'm name dropping a lot of people, right? But like Neely Fuller said, Amos Wilson and Neely Fuller said, we're possessed.
Right.
We're possessed. We're a people who have a Black body, but we're possessed with a white mind. Because there's no Black mind that would kill another brother. There's no Black mind that would disrespect a Black woman. That's a white mind.
Absolutely. Brother Ghana, then Brother Lewis, I'm going to let you all close us out.
I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to pass it to Lewis. Let him close it out, man. Y'all did well.
Appreciate you.
Well, I think for me, the way how Brother America First Argument, with the way he said that he didn't want to be around dysfunctional Black folks, I'm like, what Black folks that he didn't want to be around? The way he was saying it was just, that was kind of sad, the way he just said it like that.
Right.
So I don't know how he said that he wants to blame us for not doing this and not doing that and not fix our community. I mean, we've been trying to fix our community for how many years? But we always see that people who run the country have been trying to stop us from trying to fix our community.
That's
I mean,
right.
we have like what grassroots organizations that have been trying to stop the crimes and drugs and everything else.
Yeah, those organizations were destroyed. COINTELPRO.
Right, we're destroyed. Exactly right. But I think you do have something like that today, and I think he's trying to overlook that and make it seem like that they don't exist, because I don't see Black people doing anything about this type of stuff, which is not true.
Right. Totally not true.
It's as if he doesn't even understand how oppression works, or that it even exists. It exists, with an intention. You know what I mean? They're oppressed with intention. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to be successful in life. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're supposed to be, poverty is concentrated. You know what I mean? They're trying to prevent you know, youth from succeeding. Like, it seems like he doesn't understand that part of the game, like as if that doesn't exist. You know?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And the one thing he said, well, why don't we go back to Africa? So one of the things you have to understand is we do have first world privilege here in America. And so as someone who's traveled abroad, you become accustomed to that first world privilege. We also know that on a continent, these are developing nations who oftentimes have difficulty developing themselves economically and even industrially because of what the CIA and the State Department engaging in actions to prevent them from doing
right.
so. A good example is when we look at what's going on right now in Haiti, right? Most people would think, oh, see, this is just an example of Black people unable to govern themselves. No, the American government has been engaging in activities for over 100 years to keep Haiti in a position to where it's destabilized so that they can come in and control the economy through regime change and puppet leaders. The same thing happened in Libya. Right, the same thing happened in Ghana, right? When Kwame Nkrumah was growing the economy, right, funding other liberation movements on the continent. He wrote the book Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. They say, get his ass out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is when you talk about, I think Brother Ghana said, the nature of oppression, but the goal is to make it appear on the surface as if they're doing this to themselves. And then we have to come in and save them from themselves. We know that is not the case whatsoever.
Beautiful. That's it, man.
Yep.
Absolutely. So once again, family, I appreciate you all tapping in. Make sure you subscribe to Lumumba Speaks and to Brother Bequaline's network, Bequaline Network. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. And Brother Steve, we got to talk offline about possibly doing some lives together as well. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace. Always bet on Black.
All right, peace.
See you, brother.
No problem.